Saied. There was a big wall. I thought I was insane. A little bit more room that way. There you go. Perfect. But Saied thought I was absolutely insane. We were going to buy it, but I just wanted a space that was dedicated that we could come to and kind of hang out, have people like you here, and then and just make it feel. I don't want to use the word man cave like, but I want to say that I wanted to enjoy it like and feel comfortable like just hanging out.
Right.
But I also originally the intention was to to work here too. And now I find myself way more relaxed whenever I come here. I'm not doing enough.
So you don't want to work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not what I would call hyper conducive to working because it's just super relaxing. But I'm getting through it. That green room concept.
I like it a lot because it's like a place for someone who wants, if you have a guest or someone who has a guest with them, they can hang out, kind of watch the show unfold. And
that was the idea. Although it's been kind of interesting the way that's played out whenever we have people here. So the first time I had a guest on in this studio space was Pejman. He came with his wife.
Okay.
And she sat back there and watched. And I realized that I needed quickly to find some way for them to listen with like headphones. Because we close the glass.
It's too quiet.
It's too quiet. You can't really hear that well. So what I've done is I've modified the TV that's in that room to, if I wanted to play this feed on the main camera to that room.
Speakers out of the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can literally hear from that space.
Oh, that's rad.
So it's not bad. So thanks for coming, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised I didn't get you on earlier, but all the chatting and I've been a fan of kind of like the off-road space for such a long period of time. And people who listen to the show know that I've built like a Jeep, and I've always followed your content from that space.
That's awesome, and I've been a fan of the show for quite a while, and it's
we
surreal.
all make bad choices.
It's surreal to be here for the show. I mean, it's kind of like playing catch with a famous baseball player or something. It's like that's what it feels like.
Bro. I don't know how many shows you've listened to, but like when Saied and I started. It feels like it was yesterday, but it was like several years ago. But it was just two dudes in a garage, like having a good time. And my wife's Tesla the light would flicker on and off because of motion in the garage from us, so it would freak us out. But we're still two guys from a garage, man. And the production quality certainly looks like a bigger show. I'll give you that. But I mean, the show's small still. We're still having fun with it.
Yeah, I was really cool. It was cool to see that you guys were. Developing the podcast and kind of finding grooves and then now interviewing guests. And it's just, it's cool to see the diversity. And obviously this new space is awesome in the studio.
The goal was always to talk to people like you. I would say that have you heard the stories about Larry the Cockroach?
No, I don't. Maybe. Have you guys talked about it on the show?
Yeah.
I probably have.
Older shows.
Yeah.
So in the older studio space, which was really just a separate office in the law firm space, one day, Saied and I are going to the restroom, which is down the hall. Same bathroom here, just the other side. And there's like a cockroach just dead on the floor. And I'm like, I'm not cleaning that up. And he looks at me and goes, I'm not cleaning that up. We're like, all right, well, this is weird. So we just left it there, right? And then the next week we came back to record a show, and Larry the Cockroach is still there, right? And we named him Larry, and it was kind of like a joke. And we're like, yo, we can't be in we can't have guests come. With the space.
See Larry on the bathroom.
Yeah. Right. And then we were still on the fence about having guests. We had some friends come and hang out. The space is very different over there, so it's not like as comfortable. And then literally I'm in the show one day, mid-show, I'm talking to Saied in the older setup, and I look over, and there's a cockroach, which I called Larry. I'm like, oh my God, Saied, Larry's walking by. And you see a cockroach walking by in the space, and you're like, oh my God. So we never bring guests back here.
Humble beginnings, man. Yeah. That's where it all comes from. I started doing my content a long time ago from wherever I could just be in a place where I could shoot it. It was none of it was planned out. It's just.
Is that what you always like doing, the creative side of the stuff?
I would say, I've been creative for a long time. I remember doing videos for school projects when I was able to. So like when you didn't have to do a video for a school project, but I decided that since my dad had a camera and I was comfortable sitting in front of it, we just do a video about it. So I remember there's one science project I created a circuit. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I had to teach the class how a battery circuit worked with a light bulb. Oh. And I did a video, and I made like a little instructional video for the whole class. So
very cool. Have you seen that, dude? I've been geeking out lately reading. I haven't been sleeping a whole lot, and I have a sleeping disorder, so I don't traditionally sleep like as much as most people do. But there's a battery that just came out that's USB-C rechargeable.
Oh. Wow.
It's like a AAA battery, and it has like a little USB-C plug on it.
Oh, I have seen this. Yeah.
I think MKBHD covered it on his channel
it's
too.
It's the size of a of a AA.
It's a normal AA. So you plug in like a AA, but you can dude, that is like earth changing to me.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Forget buying the 48 packs of Energizers.
Yeah, like why are we using those anymore? It just
Right.
it seems like completely unnecessary at this point in
Archaic.
time.
Yeah.
So you start feeling comfortable recording content. You get into the working world,
Yeah.
and then at what point? I mean, was that always the goal?
No,
No.
not at all. My journey in my career has shifted so many times, and
I know. I like the new journey. We'll get there. So.
yeah, it's been all over the place. I started out doing all kinds of odd jobs in high school. It was even as like a 12-year-old, I was doing data entry for my uncle who owned a mortgage brokerage.
I did that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was digitizing his clientele. So he was moving all of his clients from literally just stacks of boxes of bankers, boxes of paperwork to a database to a CRM.
He was ahead of his time. Wow, good for
Yeah,
him.
and this
Yeah.
is like back in 2002, 3,
Okay.
and he had a little office over off of Gary in Santa Ana, the 55 right there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
That was my first law job.
was it?
Yeah, it was right over there.
So he would pay me in Disneyland tickets back then, and my mom would have to take us. So it was like a whole thing for her. I'd work there during the summertime, and got a little older in high school, and my dad wanted to build a car in the garage. It was a 65 Shelby Cobra, and that whole project took over my life for
Really?
probably 3 years. We worked on it every day. I basically had no friends. I would just come home from school, get off the bus, walk home, and I'd be rebuilding a 302 V8 in the garage with my dad, which my dad knew nothing about cars.
I like your dad already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the hardest thing he ever put together before that was a barbecue. And then one day he's like, I want to build a Cobra. Do you want to help me? And
Wow.
we started. And it took 3 years for us to do that. During that time, I bought my first car, which is a 99 Mustang GT,
Mm.
and started racing it on the track with my dad before I had a driver's license. And it was interesting because my mom used to have to drive me to the track.
Yeah, did your mom like this?
She reluctantly.
Yeah.
She was she was scared, but she wanted to support my hobbies.
Yeah, you got an interest. Your mom wants to show interest in your interest.
Totally.
Yeah, I get it.
And so she would drive me to the track. My dad would be towing his race car behind us. She'd get out and watch us. We'd race around the track at Willow Springs out in Palmdale area.
I know it well.
Yeah. And I'd race all day, hit 120, 130 miles an hour on the straightaway, and then come home. And the next day I'd take the bus to school because I didn't have a driver's license.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Oh man, in some ways I'm super envious. Later on in life, I think I was in my early 20s, and my dad was not mechanically inclined either.
Mhm.
He never bought a car. Certainly didn't try to build anything. I bought a 1968 Datsun 510,
Oh yeah.
which I tore down to like literally the frame, and then I don't know why, but I bought a JDM SR20 DET from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Broke it down myself and rebuilt it myself. Knew I didn't know enough about engines to do that kind of work, so I took it to a shop to do it. And that's actually up at Igor's shop, CA Tune in Sacramento. He's going to finish it. There was some bodywork damage that was done to it that needs to be fixed, but I did something similar, man, where you just dive into a project like that, and it's weird because for me, YouTube wasn't as prevalent back then.
No.
So it was literally forums and just kind of like reading and trying to figure out things. But the thrill of the hunt of like finding parts and all that stuff was so cool.
It was very cool. Yeah, forums were a huge part of the start of all of that. I was a part of all the different forums out there for the cars that I owned. And yeah, there was no YouTube. There weren't even Facebook groups at that time.
Mhm.
It was just, you have a specific question. You better make damn sure you hit that search bar first and look through it before you start a new thread. Because as soon as you do, and someone comes like, "Oh, you don't know how to use the search bar,"
The trolls come out. Yeah,
dude, it was good, and it was unregulated back then. It was a wild, wild
Mhm.
west of the internet. You could do whatever. But yeah, and in a way, I'm really grateful for all those forums because even today, there are problems that I'm working on a car or something, and I'll go search in Google for it, and those forum posts from 2003 are still showing up. And there's still some dude back then who wrote out a reply that is the answer to the problem that you have.
Included pictures, gave you a little
Whole
like DIY breakdown.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize too is a lot of the AI search results you get come from a lot of those forums. And I'm not just talking cars. I'm talking like cooking. I'm talking like hobbies. Those forums are like a repository of data that people keep getting pinged back on AI. They don't realize it.
Yeah, and that could be a good thing or a really bad thing. It's some of the forums I was on. So.
Yeah, well, some of the misinformation that AI gives
Totally.
you results from is or from some of those forums, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't really read into sarcasm yet.
That's why they have the disclaimer at the bottom of ChatGPT. It says
Yeah.
always double check your results for accuracy.
I know, and
But
I will tell you. So I use ChatGPT. We were talking about this before the show, but I use ChatGPT pretty much every single day in some way, shape, or form. I use
Yeah.
it a lot for the show, the podcast. It's really cool to have it like find certain segments for you, but I will cross-reference and check, and I will find I would say a good 30-40% of the time that there's an error with what it gives
yeah,
you.
yeah, I don't trust it wholeheartedly
Yeah.
for anything. But that stuff didn't exist back then, and so I
Mm.
was just getting into the minutia of everything about a car, and I wanted to know everything. I was learning all this stuff. Um, for my 18th birthday, my dad gave me his Nikon DSLR camera, which was brand new back in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
and he was upgrading to a newer one. So I didn't really know anything about photography. I didn't know anything about really video making. I mean, he would like hold a handy cam and like I do a video for a school
Mhm.
or something, but I didn't know anything about editing or, creating a video or a program or something like that. So I did know that I liked the outdoors. I grew up camping. Um,
Your dad sounds like a really cool guy.
he's great.
Yeah.
I get all my sense of adventure from him.
My dad is like the complete opposite of this. Never
Really?
been camping in his life, never touched a
Really?
camera in his life, never
Wow.
built anything in his life. Like, just
Yeah.
very different. But anyway.
Very atypical Persian family in my
Yeah.
household. Yeah, we did a lot of things that most of our cousins didn't get to do. But
Huh, all right.
but yeah, we grew up doing all that stuff, and I after high school I went to college for like 2 years
Mhm.
here in Saddleback College.
I went there
And
for about 6 months and then transferred to IVC. It felt like it was high school all over again in some
it
ways. All
really
the same
was. It
people I
was
knew were all there.
yeah.
And I'm like, damn, bro.
I guess I was hanging out with the wrong crowds too because all of my friends were at Saddleback. But
Yeah, most
it
of mine were
was
too.
it was funny because I don't really think I learned anything from college other than the fact that I knew that college wasn't for me after I left.
I felt the same way, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I don't know about you, but I felt like this imposter syndrome in college where I felt like I was going through the motions of what I was supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't gaining value from it.
Totally.
And which is here's an interesting paradigm for you. Later on in life, I went back to Yale and I applied sarcastically to this program, and I got in, and I was like, "This is awkward." And major people were going, like former Chief Staff Secretary of State during Paulson's era, during the Great Financial Crisis, was in my classroom as one of the
Wow.
students. Right,
Yeah.
Jim Wilkinson, who's also been on the show,
Mm-hmm.
played by Topher Grace in The Big Short.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm in this room with these people who are like notable people. I'm looking around the room, going like, "What the hell am I doing here?" It was very, very surreal. But I will say, once I got over that, like the I felt like I was getting meaningful education from meaningful people, but it was such a different learning experience. In school, where you read these books about these people, it's hard to really get the emotion and like the reality from some of these lessons. And some of these lessons you're like just not interested in.
Right.
This program was very different in that there were real people like CEOs of GE coming in. Like, they had a
Mhm.
CEO summit where every like major company had their CEO there, and
Mhm.
they were all talking. And you had like the former NBA commissioner was there. I mean, everybody was there, but you get to hear like these real life stories from people who really did things that they did.
Yeah.
It was so interesting.
I think the delivery has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and it's not a knock on teachers per se, but I
Right.
will say that at a junior college at that point in my life, I really didn't feel value in it.
Yeah.
I almost left college
Yeah.
because of it.
That's
Yeah.
why I did.
Yeah.
And when I walked away, it wasn't because I thought I was better than the people that went to college. It wasn't because I thought it was too expensive or any of those other reasons. It was literally because I felt like I wasn't getting enough out of it.
What
I
was your
felt,
major back then?
so that's the thing. I was just taking a bunch of classes and courses to figure out what I liked. I had no idea what I wanted
Yeah.
to be when I grew up, and I was 19 years old. And
Yeah. It's younger looking back on a retrospect than you thought you were at the time, right?
oh yeah, I felt
Yeah.
like I was this adult and that I need to
Mhm.
have my stuff figured out. And
Dude, I'm going to be 45 at the end of this month,
Mhm.
and I still don't have it all figured out.
yeah, I'm learning that as I get older that nobody really does.
Nobody does. They
Yeah.
just they get in motion and they just stay in motion.
Yeah.
That's the only tangible difference. And
Yeah.
if you're lucky enough, I was having this conversation with my wife the other night. Like, I've been with the same company for almost 20 years now.
Mhm.
And we started it and it went to where it's at today. That's so unusual now.
It is.
And
Yeah.
most people are jumping around from careers. If they're working for somebody else in a non-self-employed perspective, they're working. I think the average life, and I'll use bankers as an example here. The average life of a non-executive banker is about 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
Then they switch jobs, switch companies. If you're an executive in the banking industry, you would think it's much longer. It's actually just 4 to 5 years. So it's a little bit longer, but not much.
Not much. Yeah.
And you think about that, they're jumping jobs every 3 to 4. Like people are having like internal existential crises
Every couple of years.
every couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're a kid, for any of the younger viewers, like if you think that you have to have it figured out by a certain age, or even, God forbid, before you get out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
I get that, because you look around at all these adults around you and you go, oh, these people have this figured out. I don't have it figured out. Well, here's news for you. No one has it figured
Well,
out.
and that's true. And then the worst part about it is then you have social media ramping this up
Totally.
with this like surreal life of excess. And you and I play in the realm of social media a little bit, so we can probably parse through it a little better than some. But even I find myself, like I'll look at other people's social media numbers and growth, and I'll be like, damn, like how do they have these big account
Right.
followings? And I'll even find myself even like having like a little bit of like, oh my God, like man, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm not good at it. And then you're like, you know what? Why are you comparing yourself to somebody who, and a great example of this, I had somebody in the show who will remain nameless because I love him to death.
Mm-hmm.
But he was in the show and he was showing me his social media account.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, this guy's got a ton of followers. He was in the millions, like plus, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, like his content's good, but is it that much better than mine? Like I'm sitting there looking at him, I'm like, and I look back and he just has a lot of friends who have big followings and he's in that space and it really worked out for him.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work out for you? Is that more opportunity? That wasn't like, it's very.
What does it
weird.
equate to?
Yeah, I don't know.
I was listening to a prior episode when you guys were on Social Blade, and
Jeff Fargo's episode,
and I got into that. I started looking at some of the people that I follow, and it's so interesting to see how much of it is vanity metrics and how much of it is actually making a difference for whatever it is these people are doing.
What did you think of that show, that episode?
I thought it was fantastic.
Really?
Yeah.
I had mixed emotions about the episode. Not that I love talking to Jeff. I know Jeff on a personal level. It was just I didn't know if other people would find that interesting.
Oh, I mean, I've probably been exposed to it a little more than most normal people who don't work in social media and content creation, but the way that he laid it out was such a real way that's really how it is when you work in that space. It's you work behind the scenes of social media. Someone who breaks it down like that, you're kind of getting a peek behind the curtain, of what social media is really all about.
And to your point about earlier about, so he's done a lot of jobs. Like if you listen to the episode, he was a title rep.
Right.
The spin instructor thing threw me for a curve. I'm like, wait, like how did that never come up in our conversations? But yeah. And then now he's doing this, and he's actually doing really well. He that dad pod that he's on is doing pretty good numbers. They got a ton of sponsors. But Vegas is also a very different cultural like environment too.
Yeah.
So he's got no constraints where I got a little bit more than he does. But
Totally.
so walk me back to the college situation. So you decide college isn't for you.
I took a couple classes there in geography. And I think the reason I took them was because one of them was a geography field studies course, which basically said that
heard of that.
all you have to do is you sign up for the class. For 1 week out of that semester, you go camping with like 20 or 30 other students.
What?
For like a week.
That's a class?
Yeah. You go all over California, all over Oregon, Washington. We went all the way from here to Mount St. Helens, visited every volcano and came back.
I clearly took the wrong classes in college.
It wasn't worth a lot of credits at the time. It wasn't like transferable.
Wow.
But I took that course because I was like, oh, I can go camping and it's considered college. Like, sign me up, So we go.
Huh.
And I got so into the landscapes and the cool stuff that you can see out there in the outdoors. And I really felt at home out there. And it brought me back to my camping roots as a kid. And I had my camera with me that my dad gave me for my 18th birthday. And I took a bunch of photos on this trip. It was like a 14-day trip, I think. And
wow. That's a pretty long trip.
Yeah. And I came home and I just started to learn how to edit photos digitally and started posting them. And I got a lot of really great feedback from people. And, I think Facebook was brand new back then. But for the 20 friends I had on Facebook, were just like, this is so great, And I liked that. I was able to share some of the experiences that I had with other people out there who may have never seen this or may never see it if somebody else doesn't show them or whatever it was. Because keep in mind, like I'm only 35, but back then, like the way you showed your friends somewhere, like you were going on a trip just a few years before that, was wildly different from how it is today. You had to develop photos, send them in the mail, and that's how they would see the places that you went on vacation. We didn't have like these massive platforms where you could post all this stuff, whatever you were doing, and people didn't know
and
about
in
that
real
stuff.
time.
Yeah,
Like, it used to be you come back from a trip and tell everybody about it because they didn't see it. Now they
right.
see all of it and want to talk to you about the things they saw on your
Totally.
trip. And it's very weird. And the FOMO portion of it's crazy too.
Yeah.
I will admit, like, I have a friend, a family member actually, who's in Spain right now.
Hmm.
And I have another friend who is like family to me, who's also in Spain. And I'm sitting here looking at all these trips in real time, and it's very different to have somebody go away and come back and tell you about all the things they saw
Hmm.
versus to watch them do it in real time.
Yeah.
It's like you're living vicariously through them on some
Right.
level.
There's like
It's
an
strange.
envy there a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. A little tiny bit.
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah.
because you're sitting at a desk somewhere and you're just like, man,
Yeah.
this guy's in Madrid. You know?
That's exactly what happened today. He
He
sent me a picture of like him
Yeah.
watching like flamenco dancers, and I'm like, bro, it's like 2:00. What are you doing to me?
Why you got to be a jerk?
I'm in an office tower in Irvine.
Exactly.
So you start posting these photos online. Your friends like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I start getting some feedback from family and stuff, and I just start taking this camera everywhere with me. And I start doing photography, and then I start dabbling in a little bit of video here and there, and just shooting clips and putting little YouTube mashups together. Back when YouTube was still in its infancy,
Yeah.
and it didn't. There was no subject matter that I was like just sticking to. It was
You were just having
whatever
fun.
I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the while being a car enthusiast, right?
Mhm.
Working on cars, buying a couple. I think I had 4 cars before I was 20. So I was like,
Wow.
I was just buying and building cars and
What
just
cars
driving
you
them. I had a Mustang GT. I had a Volkswagen Golf.
have? Okay.
I had a Toyota Tacoma. Maybe it was just 3 then, before 20 years old. Yeah, and then the Cobra. Obviously, I was working on with my dad, so
Yeah.
you can consider that a 4th one if you want. But
All right.
yeah, so I was, and my brother was getting into it. So I was helping him with his cars. My cousins were getting into it. I was helping them. They didn't
It's a
really,
very eclectic mix, by the way.
yeah.
Okay.
It was all over the place.
Yeah.
There was no rhyme or reason. Every one of them was unique, And then at that time, I was working actually at a restaurant. I was working at Nordstrom Cafe of all places. And
I worked in Nordstrom too.
Did you?
Customer service, brother.
Oh, see, I'm a 3rd generation Nordy. My mom and my grandmother both worked at Nordstrom.
Oh, you're kidding,
Yeah,
really?
at some point in their life, yeah. My grandmother was a seamstress
Alright.
there. My mom was, she worked in cosmetics when she moved here to the
Oh,
US.
that's cool,
Yeah.
man. So I've got a funny story. I'll share it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to depart from the story, but so I had graduated law school and I
Mhm.
was working at Impact Multifamily Commercial Capital Corporation. And I was making pretty good money. I think back then, this is like 20 years ago. I was
Mhm.
making like well into the 200s.
Wow.
Right, and I was
Yeah.
making good money.
It's great.
But I just wasn't sleeping a whole lot, and I was like, you know what, I can do more with my day.
Mhm.
So I started working at Nordstrom on nights and weekends,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I'll get a discount on clothes, and blah, blah, blah. And I was working in customer service, and people just treated me so bad. Like, the default question people would ask me is like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
It was very weird. I had people throw phones at me. It was a wild experience, but there was one experience that stood out. There was a guy named Young Park, and I don't even know if he's still alive. I haven't heard from him in a long time.
Maybe he's watching.
Yeah, Korean dude.
Yeah.
And he was probably the most stylish guy I ever met in my
Mhm.
entire life. He almost wore always all black, but he was like he was the quiet luxury before quiet luxury was a thing.
Okay.
And he would always wear black, but all his brands were luxury, but they were unbranded.
Mm-hmm.
And he would work in customer service. I mean, this dude was just fashionable,
Yeah.
good looking Korean dude. And but I look at him, his wardrobe, and he'd come in with different cars. He had Harleys, and I'm like, what in the hell is going on with this dude's life? So I befriend him after a while because he's very quiet and reserved. And he finally tells me, he's like, my dad's a pretty successful wealth advisor on the East Coast, and he travels internationally for business, and I do pretty well for myself. So that was conversation one, and then a couple weeks go by. I'm talking to him late at night. We're closing up shop at Nordstrom, and I'm like, Young, I don't get it. Like, why are you here?
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I say, clearly you're buying. He's like, well, number one, I get to buy clothes at a discount, which is kind of nice. And he goes, but the real reason I'm here is I get to have sex with all the ladies in the makeup counter. And I was like, wait, what? And he was dead serious.
Oh my god.
Like, he's like, that's just my thing. And then one day out of nowhere, he just like vanished. I never saw him again.
Wow.
Like, never heard from him, never saw him. His number was disconnected, like gone.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
If you're out there, man.
Yeah, I know. Hit me up.
Yeah.
I would imagine he's probably in Korea,
Drop
living
us
his
a
best
line.
life.
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway,
That's great. Yeah, Nordstrom was another one of those stepping stones. And I think
Yeah.
that everybody should work a customer service restaurant style job at some point. I know
it's
that's a little
very
cliche, but
enlightening.
It is. Yeah.
And the way when I talk to people, I've never worked a restaurant job. I wish I did. That's
Mhm.
one of the jobs I never worked. But it changed the way I talk and treat to everybody I work with. Not that I treated them bad before,
Right.
but I actually care about the people behind the counter now.
Totally. Yeah. It just sets you up for being a really good person when you walk into anywhere that has somebody who's working behind the counter, customer service, restaurant, waiter, whatever it is. And you can immediately tell somebody who's never done it because
Hmm.
they're the first to, like, my mom is the same way. She's just like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna have him send it back. I'm like, Mom, just it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
like, don't worry. And she gets all up in their business. But it was a good job to teach me some discipline. Not that I was the most disciplined kid back then. I used to run through the main entrance and because I was late running into to work, and
Hmm.
you know
You're working in Nordstrom, that's normal. Yeah.
yeah, and I get yelled at by my boss all the time, and whatever. But somewhere along that road, my uncle called me back and said, "Hey, I need more help here at the mortgage office. Are you willing to come hang out and work with me?" And I said, "Sure." So I just dropped Nordstrom, and I went to go work for him at Charter Pacific Lending Corporation, and it's right here across the street. Actually, is where his office was, and
Yeah. There's a couple of them right here. Yeah.
yeah, and so I was there for a couple of years, and mainly just setting up files, and I didn't know anything really about mortgage. My mom was a realtor from when I was about 6 years old
There's a lot
until
of
now.
people in our area that are of our same ethnicity that are in the mortgage and real estate
Totally,
space
it's
because
very cliche.
self-employment was a big part of that for them. And I think in a lot of ways, I think the Iranian community naturally found itself wanting the bigger commissions from the deals.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're good at it naturally, salespeople, and
Mhm.
able to talk about a home, or talk people about their finances and stuff. I think that
It's a
kind
very
of
different lifestyle too, though. I
yeah,
think that the traditional W-2 corporate American jobs for a lot of people, not just them culturally, but just a lot of people in general, I think, especially when you're probably your first and second generation here,
mhm.
it's not the American dream for them.
No.
Yeah.
It's not. Neither of my parents were like that. I mean, my
Yeah.
dad did have a W-2 job growing up, but it was a pretty cool job. He was a lead vehicle designer at Rockstar Games for about 12 years.
That's a pretty cool job, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have so
So
many questions.
we could go down a whole tangent, but that's
No
right.
wonder why he built the car.
Oh yeah, but he built it in real life for the first time versus on a
Yeah.
computer modeling it in
Dude,
Maya.
I like your dad.
Yeah. He was that guy. He used to
Yeah.
fly to Detroit and take 2,000 photos of one car and then come back to San Diego and start modeling
Because you
it.
got to model it.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Midnight
No.
Club, all those games, GTA, like
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
modeling those in
That's
the
a cool
computer.
gig.
Yeah, and he was managing a
Okay.
team of guys there.
Wow.
So
All right. So
he
now it
was
makes sense. All
so
right.
he was doing that until '08 when they the whole world crashed and burned, and,
Mhm.
they let him go for a bunch of guys in Indonesia. And
Of
but then he
course they
became
did.
an entrepreneur after that. My mom has always been a realtor since I was a kid. Before, she worked briefly at Nordstrom, but after that she became a realtor, and she has not looked back since. She's still working. So
Mhm.
my uncle has been a mortgage broker forever. He was a banker for a little while, and then he moved on and started his own wholesale brokerage shop.
Very
So
common trend I see is like people get into the banking space. Either
yeah.
they usually start as like a teller or they start like in a bank, actually
Mhm.
selling loans at a bank context. But the economics are so different being out on your own and independent. But you have
Yeah.
to get your own business, the name behind you. But I see that transition a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and he was very successful at it, and even through the financial crisis in '08, he actually had built his business based on referrals.
Hmm.
He didn't take subprime loans. He was doing, a lot of very clean, files, and his
Yeah.
business carried through even through all that, all those tumultuous times. So,
Yeah, I helped start a bank during those times, so trust me, I get it.
oh yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was incredibly tumultuous and scary, and what's weirder now is in retrospect when I met Jim at Yale, and I knew that he was in the room when they were making those decisions to bail out the banks. It was really weird getting his perspective
Mhm.
on like how bad it was and how close to the brink of failure it was. And I would say for people who don't realize, and you're just looking at it from like, oh, I saw The Big Short, that perspective,
Yeah.
it was way more close to just everything falling apart.
Oh yeah.
And it came down to one conversation in one room with all the stakeholders there. And it literally could have gone the other way.
Yeah. It's crazy. Sometimes I wonder what could have happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows? Given where the market's at today, you and I talk a lot about this on, in the DMs, but
Right.
I have deep concerns as to where the market is headed. And I know that sounds very Peter Schiff like, where I'm just like doom, doom, doom. But
Mhm.
I'm very concerned. And I see people like Logan, who's
Mhm.
Housing Wire's economist. He's actually Irvine too.
Yeah.
I see him, and he's so rosy and optimistic about where the market's going, and I don't feel the same way.
Yeah, we talk about that too in the DMs, and I'd love to get back into like the today's market stuff, because I think it's really important. You guys talk a lot about it here, but
Mhm.
I've learned a lot about it from watching this show,
Really?
so it's
Oh,
great.
thanks, man.
Yeah,
We try to scale back a little bit of the market commentary in the show just to we want to find a way where we can. I think a lot of people don't really relate to it because they feel overwhelmed by some of the concepts that are probably a little more complex.
Mhm.
And rather than say, "Hey, I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to figure it out," they just tend to not tune in. So we're trying to bring people like yourself in who also have started businesses who are relatable, and they go, "Okay, I can do that too."
Right.
Right. So, and I think that we mix that in a little bit, and maybe it resonates a little better.
No, I love it, and I think that the way you guys present those complex topics is a way that's palatable for people who don't have any idea what you were talking about
So
before.
basically, you're calling Saeed stupid.
Yeah.
Who's not here today, so I can say it.
Relatable. Saeed, if you're out there listening, I love you, man. I feel like I already know you. but
Trust me, he's gonna listen to this whole episode. I'm gonna
That's
get a
good.
DM or message as soon as he sees that.
I didn't say it. Chris
Yeah.
said it. Yeah. No, but I started working for my uncle at this mortgage company, and I was there for about 2 or 3 years, and I got it was great to like kind of like learn a little bit about mortgage. I wasn't an originator. I wasn't even a processor really in that way.
And you had no desire at that point in time to do any of that?
No.
Okay.
I thought it was
Interesting.
horrible. I thought it was like all this, I was like in this like post-college hippie state of like, I want to just be out in the mountains, man. I want to like be out there having fun and taking photos. Like, what is this man-made paperwork stuff that I got to send out a package of disclosures that's 80 pages long?
You realize how weird it is for you to say that now, right?
Completely.
Okay.
The irony is not lost on me at all.
All right.
And I like the, it's full circle, but we'll get through it. I think that there's a purpose for it. So I'm there for a couple of years, didn't really love the job. I was just going to it because it was the only place that was, allowing me to afford, paying my bills, which
And you were in the
little they were.
ecosystem. You had a paycheck. You had
Yep.
responsibilities.
Yep.
I get it.
And
Okay.
I knew some people, so it was cool.
Yeah.
I was just making a little spend money, and I decided that I want to go do some more landscape photography. I want to get out there a little bit, venture off a little bit deeper into the unknown, and I needed a truck. And I previously had been a car guy, never a truck guy, never an off-road guy, never really been off-road other than the one time my dad took his Land Rover LR3 out in the middle of Big Bear for like a Thanksgiving trip, and like we like hit like a ditch, and he's like, all right, let's get out of here, and just turned around and came back. That was the most experience I ever had. And didn't grow up going out off-roading, didn't go up doing any of that stuff, really just camping. And but I wanted to do more, so I bought a Toyota Tacoma, and I said I'm going to put a small lift on it. I'm going to put some 33-inch tires on it. It's already 4-wheel drive, should be capable, reliable.
It always starts off modest like that.
I know, and I knew how I was. I was
Yeah.
like, I've overbuilt every car I've had so far, but this time I'm just going to take it easy,
I've said that on so many damn cars, dude.
Oh yeah,
And it spirals.
it doesn't work out.
So hence the reason why I bought the Rivian is I knew I was never going to build this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm already going like, well, there's some aftermarket parts out there now.
They're coming out,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but when they first came out, there was nothing out there for them.
Which was the biggest selling point for me is like, there's nothing out here.
Yeah.
No one's going to build anything for this anytime soon. I got a couple of
Cybertruck.
years. Oh God. Yeah. Don't get me started there. I had a reservation for one of those, and thankfully I didn't do it, but I just didn't think it was off-road capable.
Well, yeah, we're still to be determined, I think, for
Yeah.
longevity. But yeah, and so I bought this truck and I did those couple of modifications in my driveway, and I got out there and I just realized how much I fell in love with off-roading and building the truck and having it become capable enough to go places that
It's
people
wildly
can't go.
addictive.
So yeah,
Yeah.
super. And I think it was more like just being able to get to these places that nothing else could make it to unless you had a vehicle that was ready to take you there. And I would
Not only
do-
take you there, but sustain you there too.
Totally.
Becomes like the next evolution of it. Right?
Yeah, that came on later on. I was starting with just day trips, like, I would find a place literally on Google Maps, being a geography nerd, and I would find a place and I would map it out on the computer. And back then we didn't have devices. I would just print stuff out and I'd just take them with me,
Oh wow.
the
Yeah.
printouts.
It's very different now. Yeah.
Very different. And like the GPS would work, but like not off road. We didn't have like internet connection
There's
everywhere.
no satellite connection. Like,
Yeah.
What are you talking
We
about?
don't have Starlink like
Yeah.
we have right now. There's
Yeah.
nothing. And so I would just go to these places. I'd take photos of myself there with the truck there, and people would be like, dude, where is this? Like, how did you get there? And I started to build friendships in the off-road community. And then one day I'm on Facebook just at work cruising, and a friend of mine from high school posts something saying that they need a new sales guy at an off-road shop right here. Actually, it's right behind, this studio. It's called Rebel Off-Road.
Yeah. I had a lot of work done from there back in the day.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
the owner's wife is a banker who's in my space, so
Yes.
we kind of connected a little bit. But yeah, and they when they moved closer to this place, I was like,
Mhm.
wait a minute. I was
Yeah.
like, is this a sign? Do I need to build another car?
I actually started my first day was the day that they moved to this shop over here in Laguna
Oh, okay.
Hills. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually
Yeah.
never been to the new shop, but I was with the old shop.
Oh, okay. Yeah, up
Yeah,
in Lake Forest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I told my uncle, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go take this job. And it was a pay cut. It was
yeah.
purely passion driven. And I was like, I am closing the door of the mortgage industry. See you later. I'm out.
I did this one time in my lifespan. I went to go work for Federico at Racing Dynamics.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right after that, he came back and bought the rights back from what was then Electrodyne.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd sold the rights to them and was going to leave the industry. But I was really big in the BMW scene for a
Mm-hmm.
while,
Yeah.
which is how I got into all the cars that I'm building and everything else. So similar stories.
Very similar. Yeah. So, I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about Jeeps, which was the only vehicles they were really building there.
Mm.
I was the token Toyota guy who we had like for every 20 Jeep guys that would walk into that shop to build a Jeep, there was one guy with like a Toyota of any
Yeah.
sort. And I was the guy for that guy because they were like, I don't want to talk to the Toyota guy. Like, here, Matt, you can take him. And it was a big war between solid axles and IFS. And like back then,
I get it. Yeah.
the Jeep JK was the new platform. Everybody was building them. They were probably the most modifiable vehicle on the planet at that time.
I built one.
Yeah.
Cheap to modify, endless possibilities,
Yeah.
and a whole hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah. And to speed through that business, I moved from there to marketing director within 2 years from an entry level sales position. But during that time, I learned a lot. I learned about sales. I learned about customer service from like a shop standpoint, from someone who's spending $150,000 on their vehicle. This is
On a vehicle which cost maybe at the time a third of that.
Oh, much less than that. I think that
depending
some
on
of
the
them were
model.
like 20 grand. They were bringing in, they were spending 150 grand on this thing. And you had everything from mild to wild in terms of builds, but we're no longer talking about somebody who wanted an extra crostini with their soup. We're talking about a guy who's dropping a lot of coin, and the level of customer service and care had to match that, and so I was learning all of that there. I was learning about supply chain. I was learning about B2B business because we were dealing with a lot of different, suppliers for parts. I was learning about being accountable for like timelines, like, am I going to be able to meet this guy's deadline for building this thing? Or the part's going to be here on time? Can I be accountable to make sure that everything is here so that when the Jeep arrives, we are not missing anything and the technician doesn't have a vehicle on the lift that's waiting for something?
It's going to sit there and then you're going to waste time and money.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mistakes that I made. I was sent home from that job on more than one occasion because of how big of a screw up I did there.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, go think about what you did. Like that kind of thing.
I actually kind of respect that way of doing it. I came from a world where people would just yell at you all day long and torture the hell out of you until.
Yeah, I had a really good sales manager who just actually left that business after I think probably 15 years, and he moved to Canada with his family. But shout out Taylor, he was great. But
that's a left.
Yeah, he taught me a lot. It was some tough love, but
Taylor,
I learned so much.
Dude, I think I know him.
He might be the one that did your build. Yeah, Taylor Blagden.
Wow. Oh yeah, it was him.
Yep.
Wow, he moved to Canada?
Yeah, he just moved.
It was just like
his wife is from Canada.
Oh,
and they wanted to be around more family up there and just live a little slower life.
Didn't he have a pretty badass rig too?
Yeah, he's had a couple. He's had a JK. He's had a JT.
The silver one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Iron Man build.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had some amazing builds.
Yeah. I learned a lot from Taylor. I learned a lot from him. And I became marketing director there, and we worked together at that company, kind of just trying to grow it and build it. And that business kept growing. It's still growing today. They have a second location in Texas now.
Do they really? I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. And they're working on all kinds of vehicles. So I got to learn so much about, that stuff there. And when I became marketing director, I had to learn how to market a company, how to market a brand.
It is different than I think people think that it is.
Yeah.
The perception of what the consumer sees versus the design around the business side of it is a very different disconnect.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, you want to put your best foot forward. You want to show off something about your business. Like, how do you connect to that customer? And if you want to grow into a different cohort of people, how do you reach those people? Like that business evolved over time. It started out with just hardcore rock crawler Jeep guys. But, as time went on, there's other platforms that came out that, they wanted to capitalize on, whether it was like Overland builds or Toyotas, which they moved into more bigger trucks, all these things. Like, these are all different.
And the overland subculture has boomed in the last 10 years. I mean, it is a massive sub industry that has kind of blossomed. And I look at it as kids that were our age, doing some of the things that we experienced,
Right.
that have grown up and can now afford to do those things, to build those things,
Yeah.
and they want to take their families out and do them too. And it's actually kind of cool to see because it
Yeah.
is in a lot of ways like community driven.
It is. Yeah. I would say that we're just now past peak Overland. I think that was during the pandemic.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah,
But there's many reasons for that, and I can get into it. But I think that what you were just saying is very true. I think that a lot of the import guys who like tinkering on cars,
hmm
they're growing up. They're 30, 35, 40 years old. They have kids, they have families now. You can't be like going out to a track event, time attack with your Honda. Like
yeah, it's
you want
not a good look.
no, you
Yeah.
want to scratch that itch. You buy a 4Runner, you put a bunch of parts on it, a rooftop tent, a lift, wheels, and tires. You take the family out camping for a weekend,
Mhm.
and that scratches the itch. And
Yep.
yeah,
And I've seen it more and more and more,
Oh, yeah.
and it becomes like this weird thing. Like like those moments where like you're supposed to be working, but then you're like, wait a minute, I want to do that one thing.
yeah,
Well, that one thing for those guys is like, okay, how do I get like a Pelican, this or
Mm-hmm.
that, or what do I need for the next trip? Oh, I need a fridge, or oh, I need a cooktop.
It's very
oh, I need
gear
running
driven.
water, and then you just wind up falling down this path of like gear
Yep.
and like upgrades, and it's just,
I call them the gear guys.
Really?
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
my thing at all. I'm very minimalist when I go out there,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's funny because like that whole subculture has grown. It's starting to shrink a little bit now because people are going back to work and they're noticing that they don't like driving a truck that gets 11 miles per gallon every day to work and back, and they don't need a rooftop tent.
I
on
used
their
to
truck.
see them in my neighborhood where people would have like the camper shells and the rooftops.
Oh yeah,
And they would literally buy and build rigs that could not fit into their garage. Which
Yep.
okay, fine, I get it. I had 35s and a 3-inch lift on my Jeep. I get it.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you could see them. They were sitting under car covers on the street in my neighborhood, which became more and more dense with these excess cars
Mhm.
during the pandemic. And you see them slowly, one by one, just like disappear.
Yeah,
they're going
it's
away.
weird.
Now.
Yeah, and the guys who are sticking around who are in it for the long haul are getting a really good deal on these things
They
now.
are, yeah.
because they're liquidating all of it and the gear too on secondhand on Facebook Marketplace.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I've seen a lot of the recently. I've seen a lot of the Mercedes camper van kind of things. What are they called? The Sprinter vans.
Oh yeah.
I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of those on
Mhm.
sale recently.
Well, yeah, van life was its own thing back then too.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go live in a van." I'm gonna go do that.
Social media glorified it. It still is,
Totally.
but it's not as in your face as it once
No,
was.
no.
For a while, dude, there was every single time I got on social media, I would scroll, there'd be somebody else like repping van life and
Oh, yeah.
talking about traveling.
Yep.
And now you're seeing less and less of it. And I wonder if it's going to die out or if it's just going to kind of
It'll normalize.
perpetuate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people just didn't realize like how hard that actually is to sustain.
Dude, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
so hard. And it's
Yeah.
glorified, but I think people don't understand, like, you have to deal with waste, you have to
Mhm.
deal with rest stops, you have to figure out where you can park, and
Yeah.
it's not as simple as I think people make it out to be.
Yeah. And the overlanders too, or the influencers that you were just talking about. It's funny
My
because
favorite.
a lot of those guys are going away because these parts companies are not sending them as much free parts as they were during the pandemic. Like sales are down in that industry as a whole.
Sorry, I'm turning
So-
the air conditioning on. It's getting a little toasty
No,
in
you're
here.
good. Yeah. Sales are down in that industry as a whole. So first thing these companies are doing is they're cutting their influencer budgets. So it's like, I can't get this free
Yeah.
roof rack for my van. You know what? Like people just aren't playing ball anymore. So
I've seen a lot of that recently where people like really, and I look at this as more of like, community economics driven, but I've seen a lot of what I think are people that normally would get products that
Mhm.
are really struggling to get brand deals working now.
yeah, the creator economy has not been kind to a lot of folks in this industry.
You think that's consumer? So obviously, you listen to the show, you know that we've been really skeptical over consumer discretionary spending and
Right.
kind of like the perspective. I think without getting too far into it, there was like Liberation Day, volatility in the markets. People were freaking out a little bit, like,
Mhm.
is my job going to be there? Our company's going to downsize. Do you think a lot of that consumer discretionary spending is already hitting the influencer market and it's
I-
going to trickle down?
I thought that would be something that would contribute to it, but I mean, I've seen that this industry, like automotive enthusiast industry and those parts, it has it's like Larry the Cockroach.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
it
not going to
has-
die
right.
for sure.
It has survived these swings, but I think that the problem is that a lot. I worked in a shop. I've worked since then for maybe half a dozen other companies
Mhm.
that are small businesses in this industry. I think that the way that these companies are ran is that when sales are good, the owner goes out and starts buying stuff.
Yeah.
They start buying a new boat. They They start buying a new RV. They're going to go buy another location because they think it's going to keep going up and up and up and up.
The location thing, in regardless of industry,
Yeah.
I've seen this problem. So I used to underwrite loans, and
Mhm.
I would there was a period of time where I underwrote C&I business loans, right,
Yeah.
commercial industrial loans, and you would see these companies that did well,
Mhm.
and then you would see them blow up everywhere.
Mhm.
And I got to look at a lot of those companies, like restaurants that you would see that went from one location to several. A great example of this is the Salt Bay guy.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
He was well capitalized, ton of money. And people don't realize is like you can take people's money to capitalize your business as a quote investment and grow these locations, but you have to stabilize their income.
Right.
And if you don't stabilize their income, curate an experience, and build a solid foundation of reoccurring revenue, those locations will spike as people have an interest, and then the income will go away as the interest phases out.
Mhm.
And particularly when you're him and you're selling like a high ticket experience and
Right.
item, that sizzles out even more,
Mhm.
and your normalized income winds up being not enough to service your debt, and you wind up in a situation where you've now scaled way too fast, and you have to scale back or close.
Yeah.
And
That's
that becomes
exactly
like a reoccurring problem with entrepreneurs.
that's exactly what's happening, and I think that that happened a lot with this industry because at the end of the day, a lot of them are just gearheads. They're not business people. You know, they don't have
Mhm.
MBAs. Like they had a great idea for a product or service, and there was a need that they were fulfilling, and they were doing well. And it's like you should have just kept growing. The ones that are successful, are the ones that just grew at a rate that they could
Yeah.
sustain. And I think that the first thing that they start to cut back on is a lot of that marketing, a lot of that influencer brand deals, like
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, like that's the hardest thing to track back to sales.
ROI. Yeah, it's really
Exactly.
hard to tack into your. Some of it is so much of it is reputation and visual. Like, there's no way to track. Hey, this guy bought my product because he saw that guy's page
Exactly.
and came here.
It's very hard to quantify it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's typically the first thing that they cut back on. I think that that's what we're starting to see now is that
Mm.
unless you're established content creator, you've demonstrated that your ability to create content is what is actually attributing to sales in a quantifiable way.
That's where
Then
affiliate marketing is. That's where I'm seeing much more people push affiliate codes now
yeah.
because that's so much more trackable.
Yeah, but it's so I mean for high ticket items in that industry, it's hard to even be really good at it. You know, if you're like doing TikTok stuff for like something under $50,
Hmm.
you can be really wildly successful at, affiliate marketing.
Yep.
But it's hard to do that with a $3,000 suspension system.
Oh, it's impossible.
Yeah.
You're just not going to do the same. And that the buyer of a high ticket item like that is generally going to be somebody who's sophisticated enough to just call you guys directly and have
Correct,
that
yeah.
conversation. They're not going to go through some influencer's page
No.
doing an affiliate code.
It's not an impulse buy.
It's not.
Yeah.
And it's very thoughtful and pragmatic.
Yeah, exactly. So they spend a lot of time researching these products before they go into them, and that makes it even harder to quantify. So
Yeah, I was one of those guys. Like, I spent weeks looking at suspension options and trying to figure. I still do it.
yeah.
I mean, the studio's got a master class in overthinking stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Shout out ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT helped me out a lot. A lot of the visuals early on.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, show me what this would look like.
Right.
Yeah, I'll show you some pictures when we're done.
Yeah.
Of like how the lighting, like the design, all that. That
Yeah.
all came from ChatGPT.
You know, I just did my garage gym, and I have a single car garage that none of our vehicles fit in. So I just said, okay, I'm not making this a storage unit. I'm going to make it into a gym, and I
for
did
you.
that exactly.
Did you?
I basically just had
Good
it.
man.
I told it to. I want the tonal on the wall here. I want the treadmill here, and I want the floors to be this color. And I wanted it to play with different wall colors and different patterns and stuff. So
We got to spend some time at some point in this conversation to talk about the weight loss journey. You look fantastic.
Thank
man.
you. Yeah.
You lost a healthy amount of weight.
thank
brother.
you. Yeah, I'll try to fast track to that point. I mean, I don't know.
No,
I
don't
guess
try
like
to fast track anything.
the
You
way
got
that
nothing
this
but time.
conversation's gone is like it's almost like a history timeline of my life. So,
Yeah, but look,
Yeah.
it's a time capsule, and to be honest
Yeah.
with you, I think the end conclusion of where you are today is actually really cool. So by all means, like I don't want to detract from that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll keep going. Yeah. I worked at Rebel Off Road for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And after that, I realized I was kind of in this glass ceiling situation where I wasn't going to grow any further from where I was. And
Mm.
I
So you were
wanted,
cognitively aware of that, and you just wanted more. Is
correct.
that okay?
Yeah. I was never going to be the owner of that company. And I was basically number 2 or 3 if you put Taylor ahead of me. But I think we were kind of, we had different roles, but we were
Yeah.
at the same level. And, I wanted to do more. I wanted to grow more. I understood business on a better level than I did before I walked into that shop, and I wanted to just maybe see a different side of this industry. So I worked at a dealership for about 3 months after that. Never going to go back to that again.
One of my
Hated
first jobs was I worked for Irvine BMW.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I hated it.
Oh,
in
yeah.
every sense of the word.
yeah, it was horrible. I worked at Huntington Beach Jeep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that probably wasn't good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have friends there now, so I'm not going to talk bad about it. But it wasn't
It's a
a
very
good fit.
different environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Was
a very
not
different
a good
environment.
fit for me. I was the aftermarket parts manager, and I still didn't like it.
Yeah, but aftermarket parts in a dealership is
Yeah.
not the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that. I moved from there to MagnaFlow, the
didn't
exhaust
know that.
company. Yeah.
Okay.
And I worked there as just a tech advisor on the phone. People were having problems installing their exhaust kits, and they'd call me to help them walk them through it on the phone.
Huh.
Yeah. I did that for about a year. And, this whole time I'm doing content on my own social media. I'm growing my own page, showing people my build, where the places that I'm going. And I accumulated a bit of a following. It was probably about, I don't know, 8,000 or 9,000 followers at that point.
Huh.
And
Look at all the exposure to different industry parts of the same industry.
all over, manufacturing,
it's
all
a
of
lot.
it. And it was cool to be able to get a holistic view at the end of this run of like every piece of it,
Mhm.
And the last one that I hadn't got into was really like the hardcore like marketing agency. But I saw a friend of mine actually sent me a job posting for a truck editor for Driving Line magazine, and I knew almost nothing about them except for that they were somehow affiliated with Nitto Tire, and I saw that it was in Irvine. I was like, okay, it's local. This is a different role. So I go there, just to see what the job was about. I had no idea what I was going to get into. And they said, okay, well, have you ever worked in like a publication? I said, no, this is my experience. I'm very technical heavy, and I know everything there is to know about off-road vehicles and trucks. And I can kind of write well. And they said, okay, well, we'd like to see a couple like sample articles that you can write.
Yeah, see what your writing's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And folks, this is long before ChatGPT. I couldn't just go in there
You
and,
couldn't
and
be
write
like, write me
something
an
real
article that
quick.
says
Yeah, I
this, yeah.
literally had to sit down for like a day and a half and just like write it and rewrite it and make edits and polish it up. And I did that. And
The ideology of writing is going to change a lot.
completely.
Yeah.
Completely. And I even find that my own writing style has changed since ChatGPT has come
Oh,
out.
mine too.
Yeah.
This is going to sound terrible. I purposely humanize my writing in ways that I know are idiosyncratic to the way humans write,
Right.
intentionally to make it clear I did not pull this off ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because so people don't realize that I do a lot of media quotes with journalists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Journalists will hit you up. If they know you, they will hit you up via email and say, hey, I'm writing this article. This is the context. Can you give me like some sound bites? The ones who don't know you will typically call you and have a conversation because they don't want to risk ChatGPT, and even though they run it through AI editors.
Mm-hmm.
But when I respond back to them, they run everything I give them through an AI, scan to make sure it's not AI. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So I know that I have to write in such a way that they clearly pass. Because even if it's 1% AI, I've had journalists call me back and be like, Chris, you plagiarized this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And their AI scan will say that literally it was a definition. I think it was a definition like a bond or something. And I'm like, I'm an attorney by trade. So like I naturally memorize definitions. So
Right.
I gave you the definition. So yeah, of course it's going to say it's plagiarized from somebody else. That's the definition.
Right.
He's like, well, you didn't cite it. And I'm like, bro.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, but that's the AI
That's
world
the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna get those checks all the time now.
Mhm.
It's crazy. But I didn't have that, and I had to go off the dome.
So you just wrote three
write
things?
articles, three
Okay.
articles.
All right.
I turned them in, and I think it was like 6 or 7 more interviews with this company.
Wow.
And
I've never understood that amount of interviews. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it, but at the same time, it's like that's a lot of time and energy.
It was, and I used to go straight from MagnaFlow, which was in Oceanside. And I used to drive down there for
Wow.
work, leave at 3:00 because I get there at 7 a.m. and I'd come straight to the office here in Irvine, and I did the interviews with them wearing my MagnaFlow shirt. And later on, found out that the managers thought that was a bad look that I brought my shirt from my work to here. And it was
But
just
you're
funny.
interviewing for a new job.
Correct.
How is that a
Yeah.
bad look?
She still gives me crap about it, but I think it was just funny that it was looked at negatively when I had a completely different,
I guess those are also
perspective.
different demographics.
Totally,
Like,
yeah.
writing in media versus, kind of the
Yeah.
aftermarket parts. I guess it's a different
Yeah,
one,
it is very different. I didn't know anything about this company, and I come to find out that they weren't actually like a publication. They were actually a marketing agency.
Hmm.
And they were an agency of record for Nitto Tire. That they had created this publication, Driving Line, basically to just show a lot of the different areas of the automotive culture, but having all the ways in the background some tie back to Nitto.
to highlight the brand. A friend of mine does this for a similar tire company right now.
Yeah.
Where he's effectively outside, but really an inside kind of marketing guy.
Yeah.
But he basically, his job, and it's a really cool job, is he connects with, and I don't want to like out him, but he connects with other brands, and then he makes sure that their product is, on their brands.
Yeah, they co-brand on these projects. Yeah. So what was crazy was back in 2016, 17, like they were the only ones in this space that had really been doing content marketing like that.
When you think about it, it's incredibly savvy. Like, I don't know
Oh
whose
yeah.
idea it was,
Right.
but it's the subtle cross pollination. If a brand is everywhere you look, so let's say you're looking at you're looking at a suitcase, but in the
Mhm.
background you see Louis Vuitton. You're
Totally.
looking at a home, but in the background you see Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton is marketing to you without marketing to you.
Totally subliminal.
It's
Yeah.
such a brilliant design, and
Yeah.
social media has gotten way more in your face as of late. But there are still some brands that do this
Yeah.
incredibly well,
Yeah.
and
Very,
it's
well.
really that's how you get good return on investment.
Yeah, and I think that they were at the time pioneering that, especially in the automotive industry. And I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was way ahead of its time, and I just wanted nothing more than to be a part of that team. And they hired me as a truck editor. I've started publishing articles like about technical stuff, about motorsports. I was flying all over the country to cover all kinds of events. I went to Riyadh to cover an auto show.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was going all over the place to just cover all these different stuff, and
They had a
and
pretty
I,
big budget, huh?
it was yeah, their marketing budget was substantial back in that
Okay.
time, and honestly, for being something that wasn't a direct advertisement, it was wildly successful for their business, and still is to this day. So somewhere along the line, articles online and blogs. That's back when blogs were still pretty hot, and like articles were hot. People were reading the stuff online. They were getting newsletters and the
Blogs were
emails.
Instagram before Instagram.
Totally, yeah. And social media started to pick up, and their strategy was shifting to more video content, and they hadn't really done a ton of it. There was a lot of polished video productions that they were doing. They were starting to see the benefit in doing shorter, more at home style videos.
People forget that video started off as like these corporate promo videos,
Totally,
and then
yeah.
then pivoted to like everybody instantly had overnight a camera in their pocket,
Exactly,
and then they had a screen to view this content in their pocket, and it changed the landscape so quickly.
Yeah, and that's happening all across every industry. And I think that that's where they were seeing it headed. They were very forward thinking. And the company was called C Digital Labs. They were basically just the agency of record, but they're also like a startup accelerator for a bunch of other companies. It was really a great experience working for them because I got exposure to a lot of the different things that they were doing at that company.
I think in some ways, if I could go back and do it all over again, like that is something that I would probably want to explore as a career path that I never thought of when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like I because I'm in this space now, and I've seen. So you followed the podcast. But we grew the podcast from an audio only platform, which is why our streaming numbers on audio platforms are way better than our video stuff. And we knew that we had to make the transition to video, but it's incredible to see how many people get stuck and can't transition over because of all the work. I mean, it's way more data heavy,
Right.
way more editing heavy, and way more distribution heavy.
Yep.
But the payout is you have a better product.
Totally.
And I think that there's something to be said for where like short form video content and brands are going. I had a guy the other day who saw the podcast video, and he was like, "Hey man, like I'm interested in doing a podcast with you." I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, what do you do?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm a contractor." And I was like, "Huh." But he's like, "Dude, like we have to have a personal brand. Like
Gotta
we
get
need
in it.
this."
Yeah.
So the world is really going hard
Right.
into that, and it looks like a company like that was probably way more in the forefront than they recognize.
Totally. Yeah. And the funny thing was that nobody over there was really willing to get in front of a camera and talk about this stuff, but they were like, they tapped me and they said, "Hey, could you start a vlog?"
Make sure to wear your MagnaFlow shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And they ended up becoming a partner of Nitto too at some point, I think. So it was funny the crossover there. But
They literally asked you to start a vlog.
they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Could you start a vlog?" And this
That's
is
so
where
cool.
a lot of the personal fears started to show up in my career.
Huh.
At the time, I was about 350 pounds. And
Okay.
I wasn't comfortable being in front of a camera and talking and
Wow.
being the face of this brand, of this magazine. And I was the only one that was doing it at the time.
This is going to sound like a stupid question, but bear with me.
Yeah.
Why did you think your weight mattered?
I was very self-conscious about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've gone through periods in my life
Yeah.
where I was very heavy myself.
Yeah.
I think that heaviest I got was like around 275, 280, but
Right.
I carry it all on my face.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. But I had similar insecurity. To this day, I don't know about you, but I still look, whenever I look at myself in the mirror, I've never had a day where I look in the mirror and go like, "Oh, I feel attractive."
I'm the same way, man.
I've always been like, "Ew."
Body dysmorphia and all that goes with it, and it's been a big part of my life. Yeah,
yeah, I get it.
yeah, and just like the cringe, I was always the guy behind the camera, right? You got to understand, like I was always the one capturing this beautiful whatever it is that was in front of me, whether it was a car, or it was landscape, or whatever. And
so you agreed to do this anyway.
I had no choice. If I wanted to,
You had a choice.
I mean, I did, but if I wanted to stay there and if I wanted to grow, and I had to make that choice to be able to just grow it into my career. And my mom instilled a lot of things in me. One of them was like, if you're stuck between two choices, the harder one's usually the one that you got to do. That's the right one to take. And it's like you take the easy way out and you just say no and you go look for another job. I could have done that, but I said, all right, let's give it a shot.
I like that.
They had like 150, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube at that time. And
that's intimidating.
It was.
That's intimidating.
And I had to craft a show to basically pilot test this vlog concept.
So you were in charge of picking the concepts, producing it,
editing it, putting it out, publishing it, writing the description from start to finish, basically from ideation of whatever the episode was, all the way through publishing, and then even post-publishing, going through the comments, answering questions.
That's a big undertaking.
It was a lot, yeah. And it was on top of doing all the other, publication stuff we were doing, was just writing articles and, doing the print magazine quarterly and all that stuff.
Just part of that would be, in today's world, a full-time job.
Totally. Yeah. So I was tasked with this. The first trip was the first episode that we were doing was basically I did a road trip to Alaska and back for the Alcan 5000. And I threw this on myself. I said, hey, what if I just did one vlog a day on that trip? And they're like, sure. And I didn't think about the logistics of doing that on a trip that I was taking essentially by myself. And trying to upload and, driving 9 hours a day, getting to the hotel, eating a quick meal, editing it for 3 hours after that in this hotel in Whitehorse, Canada.
And then you have Yukon. No time to sleep.
No, and forget trying to upload it. I'd have to find the nearest like fast high-speed internet in the Yukon and post it.
Oh my God.
So I got a crash course, on all this stuff, like GoPros, downloading all the SD cards and everything into my little laptop. And, I really learned quickly. And
you had no choice at that point. Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. I was already in it. And I called the show Chasing Dust. And the crazy thing is that it is still going on. I still do that vlog for them today. But I've kept that relationship with them this entire time because it's been so wildly successful. They've now spun off probably a dozen other content creators that are doing the same thing. And then now there's
I've
always
loved the name, by the way, Chasing Dust.
Thank you.
I when I first saw it, I think probably a couple of years ago, maybe longer. The name alone is what captured. I was like, I'm in. The name alone.
What's funny is they didn't like it when I first got it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
They were just like, I don't know, but it doesn't really mean anything. I'm like, yeah, it means something.
It's such a subtle nod to the space. You
Right.
would think. Well, I guess if you're in an agency perspective and you're not living, it probably doesn't resonate. Yeah.
I grew up watching all these cool documentaries, Dana Brown and Dust to Glory and all that, and I took a lot of inspiration from some of these documentaries and things like that. And I
thought it was a fantastic name.
Thank you. Yeah. So over that time, I was doing a lot more video content. Social media was bolstering that a little bit. I started growing a bit of a following. Eventually I decided to, I wanted to do this same thing, but for other brands. So I branched off and I said, I want to continue my relationship with you guys, but I want to be able to work as a freelancer. And they took the deal and they allowed me to go and basically do the same thing, marketing for other companies. Basically just doing video marketing, doing social media management and some of these other, tasks that most shops can't do on their own.
Were they at all concerned that you were essentially the face of their franchise in this vlog series? It's very public and obviously on a large channel that you may cross-pollinate brands and confuse their IP?
I actually asked them about that before I went ahead and did it. And the feedback that I got was that we think it bolsters the brand.
I agree, but that's actually unique that a company from their perspective would say that's cool.
Yeah, it was. And it was really like the runway that I needed to get started because, they could have just as easily said like, we kind of own your face, dude. Like you're our IP,
Yeah, they would do it in a passive aggressive way where they say, look, you can go, but you don't get to be on this anymore.
Right.
So your face is ours on this IP.
Exactly.
Which is terrible, but A lot of companies do that, man.
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate that I had such a great relationship and still do with this brand that they trusted me and it enabled me to go and do this for other companies. And so I set out 2019 to go do this and started my own business, Desert Chief Media, and immediately got a few clients in my hands. And it was cool to be able to go to these other small businesses around here and basically just show them everything I know about marketing and social media. And I was
Was
doing
that intimidating when you started it? Because you're walking in, you're pivoting to back to the sales role in some
Mhm.
level.
Yeah, yeah, that was and it's funny, I pulled, some of those skills from the off-road shop, I was, like, building
Mhm.
out a proposal for these guys, and I
Yeah.
was just, building out a scope of work, and I was showing them, like, "Here's what I'm gonna do, here's what I'm not gonna do." You can't these are the things you can count on me for, I'm not gonna pick up my phone at 2 in the morning and fix your website, like,
I'm
this
not
isn't
IT
my role.
support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And this is how much I'm charging you guys, and it's an ongoing thing, and I need a commitment for this long, and like again, all before ChatGPT. You couldn't just tell it this is what I wanted to do. I had to write the proposal from start to finish on my own.
But you knew, like knowing the commitment of length of time to get
Yeah.
return, you knew some of those. I see a lot of young people in this space that get into it, and they don't understand. Like, I use a podcast as a proxy again.
Hmm.
A lot of people will start a podcast, and then 2 or 3 episodes deep, they're like, "I'm out."
Yeah.
So I see a lot of people who are in the professional space of producing them saying, "Hey, look, unless you're going to do this for 6 months, like I'm not even going to do one with you."
Yeah, man. I mean, I was so hard headed that like I made a ton of mistakes like that.
Mm.
I had undersold myself time and time and time again. I thought that it was more important to just get their business. And so I was trying so hard to just like impress the
Yeah,
company.
that's hunger when you start. That's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah, but at that time I had so much momentum that I was like, I'm just willing to work through it. I didn't have a life, I didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have anything else going on. I was just like by myself, living in this house and working on my own little projects and whatever spare time I had.
It's amazing what. So I was single for a very long period of time. I didn't think I was ever going to get married,
Hmm.
and then I met my wife. She moved in on the second date. True
Hmm.
story. And we've been together for ever since. We have a son. It's an amazing life. But I spent a lot of time the same way, head
Yeah.
down, just working. And I know people like my dad would come over and be like, are you lonely? And I'd be like,
Yeah.
no, like I feel totally
Mhm.
fulfilled. But for him, it just didn't register.
Right.
But for me, I found it such like a. I knew at the time it was unique, and I knew it was a creative opportunity to just build,
Totally.
and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
Season the building.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing that for that basically the whole time that I was from, starting at Driving Line till when I started my own company and started rolling into that. I think the real pivot was that I was living life really fast back then. I was just doing whatever I wanted. And I all the while in the background was this like health thing that I
Mm.
was neglecting completely. I
You knew that at the time.
oh yeah. I mean, I was probably by 2019 I was about 365, 370 and multiple comorbidities. I had like insane swelling in my legs. I
Mm.
had like really bad pitting edema, pre-diabetic, sleep apnea, untreated sleep apnea. I was like refusing to wear a CPAP.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
intimidating. They're not aesthetic. People
Oh
don't.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds stupid, but
Right.
yeah, I get it.
Hypertension stage 1,
Okay.
as a 29, 30-year-old kid. Like,
So you had been to the doctor. You'd had your blood panels done. Like you
well,
knew this,
I
right?
I knew this a little bit later on, but I was just completely keeping myself ignorant of all that for a long time,
Stay in
for
your
about
work. Use
5
it
years.
as a way to dissociate from it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it started to get so bad that the lack of sleep, or I guess the lack of restful sleep
Mhm.
was really the thing that pushed me over the edge because it just really caught up to me.
Yeah.
It was during the pandemic and I was basically just like alone in my house for a year or whatever it was. And I just felt like I was just depressed. Like I couldn't get anything done.
Mhm.
Um I was doing a lot of things that were harmful to my body. And it started to detract from work. And that's when I really noticed it.
Work is this weird. So I've had similar challenges in my working history where I've used work as like a way to escape the realities that I need to deal with because it's easy to say I need to focus on this,
Mhm.
and it's hard to say I need to not focus on this and
Mhm.
deal with this.
Yeah.
And I've gone through weight fluctuation. My mom was over 400 pounds. She just lost like over half her body weight.
Oh wow.
She's
Yeah.
I think she's actually under 200 pounds for the first time in her adult life
That's
now.
incredible.
Yeah, and she's had some GLP-1 help, but she also trains. She listens
Yeah.
to Huberman now, and
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's deep into like the
Yeah.
health and fitness just world now. And it's weird to have a conversation with my mom, who my entire adult life she was close to or above 400 pounds.
Hmm.
Um, to see her now in the complete, I mean, she's training every single day. She
Right.
walks for hours a day. She goes to the YMCA, lifts weights. She has a trainer. She has a nutritionist, and she's just. She called me the other day about cold plunging. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell, mom?
Something switched.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she's also more vibrant than she has been. I legitimately worried for a long time that she was going to die.
Yeah.
But she was a nurse who ran a hospital for the mentally handicapped,
Hmm.
and it was easy for the world around her to go, okay, that's something you should be focusing on. Like
Right.
that's morally and ethically like the right thing to
Important.
do. And it was hard for anybody around her to be like, you should be focusing on your health.
Yeah.
Um, it's I don't know, and you can't go back in time,
No.
but I don't know if my internal like the way I see myself as imposter syndrome is because I see me as her in some ways is part of the reason. Like I'm in pretty good shape now. Like,
Hmm.
I'm in decent shape, but I don't feel like it.
Hmm.
Right. Like I don't look in the mirror and be like, oh, I'm in good shape. I
Hmm.
always like worry that that's in because my mom and my dad are both like overweight,
Yeah.
you know?
Your
So,
genetics.
yeah.
I didn't have any of that in my genetics, which was made me feel even weirder, which
Mm,
is crazy. But I totally relate to what you're saying
yeah.
because, I feel like I could always go back to that, but it's because it's already happened once in my life. But
Yeah. Me too.
I was
That'll always be there though.
it is, yeah.
That's not
You just
necessarily a
learn to
bad thing
deal
though.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
motivation.
totally. Um, and when it started to affect my work, I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she's always been an advocate for my health, but I just kind of like I think, subliminally,
Mhm.
I just thought that I was gonna die early and that I wanted to live life to its fullest while I could. And I had this crazy cool career. I'd done some stuff that nobody out there that I knew had ever done before. Got to do all these crazy experiences with these trips and stuff. And I was living life fast. And I didn't have any concept of like a future with like a wife and kids and the
Mm,
white picket fence in the house and like retirement. Like I wasn't saving money for any of that stuff. I was just living in the now,
mm,
and I was spending money in the now, and I was like instant gratification, across the board for everything.
mm,
And I had one conversation during the pandemic with my best friend Brad that basically was the paradigm shift that has resulted in the journey that I've been in the last 5 years. And he called me. We hadn't talked in a while because we hadn't seen each other during COVID. And he was just saying like he's getting ready to propose to his girlfriend later this year. He needed my help with like how to do it and maybe even shoot the photos for it and stuff like that. And he said like this may be a little premature, but I'm a little concerned about your health, dude. Like, and he's built like a Greek god. He's
mhm.
like he's genetically very gifted, and
Yeah.
it's really cool. But I've always like I've never been envious of him, but he's always been a, basically a standard for like what I think would be cool to look like one day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he tells me, he goes, I may be up on that altar, and I want you to be standing right next to me, but I want you to be up there looking like the best you've ever looked, man.
Mm. Well, what a good friend.
Yeah, and it's the
And what
hard.
a good context to say it to you in. That
Yeah,
was good.
it
Yeah.
I broke down on the
Mm,
phone, and I don't know what happened, but later that afternoon, I went in the mirror and I just realized that I didn't recognize who I was looking at,
mm,
and who I'd become over the last 10 years by just neglecting this person and just focusing on just work, 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 and becoming this career guy and achieving the next thing and whatever. And. So I just knew that I needed to change something. I had no idea what I was gonna do. I tried to lose weight in the past. I tried to diet. It was just up and down. And every time I went down, I went up higher. And it was just really hard.
There's so I microdose a GLP-1 now,
Yeah.
tirzepatide,
Yeah.
but I've been lean and in shape before doing that.
Hmm.
I did it as a kind of my mom was going on tirzepatide, and I didn't
Yeah.
want her to go on something that I didn't play with.
Hmm.
And the more I played with it, the more I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Right.
And there's some neurological benefits and some cognitive benefits, which I
Hmm.
think are really powerful. But that being said, um, I don't think people who so I have that voice in my head to tell me to eat,
Hmm.
and the GLP-1 silences it in a way, but I don't think there's. So talking to my wife is naturally petite, She can eat anything she wants. She's insanely fit. I mean, she adds muscle like in all the ways that you should be envious
Good for
of.
her.
It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
incredible. She has like a naturally gifted athletic like
Hmm.
physique, and she doesn't try that hard. It's really infuriating. Um, but I talked to her about these things. She doesn't hear like the food noise.
Right.
And I don't think people who've ever not been overweight or gained like body fat understand the difference. And
Right.
truly, I didn't understand it until I got on the GLP-1.
Hmm.
And my mom had some blood clot issues, so I wasn't prepared to let her take anything that could risk her health. So
Yeah.
that's why I did it. And then I take a shot of this, and my first dosages were around the normalized minimum dosage. It was like
Yeah.
25 units, whatever it was. And the food noise was gone. It was the most unusual thing. And then as I talk to people about how I feel about food now, I realize that there's something, and I don't think we know as a society, there's something biologically different with the way my body and my mind as a result of it think about food as people who are naturally skinny do. There's just
Yeah.
something there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've also been dabbling in some of those GLP ones and
Oh, good for
kind
you.
of, basically just experimenting with them and seeing
Mhm.
how they make me feel. And I found the same thing. But to just back up a little bit more, I at the time those didn't exist. This is in 2020.
Yeah, those aren't
Yeah,
even a
they
thing.
weren't around, and the only option that was available was to me basically was going down to Tijuana and having a gastric sleeve surgery done.
Oh, did you have done?
I drove down there myself, and I mean,
Wow.
I did all the research. I did the pre-op diet. I did the consultations. I drove down there, had the surgery done over 4 days,
So
and
not the band, the actual surgery.
the actual surgery where they cut 85% of your
Yep.
stomach out and they remove it from your body.
Yep.
And
My mom had this done, by the way.
yeah, and I did that, and I came home, and I went through all that through COVID by myself, basically, and just like
Oh my God. There was
the
nobody there with you when you
no,
went through this?
no, and
People don't understand. That's a very tough recovery process.
yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people that were obviously supporting me, but
Yeah, yeah.
for not
But you're still there by yourself at the end of the
totally,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I used that opportunity because I'd heard all the stories about people who had the surgery done and then like they revert back to their old weight or even more. Their failure rate was like pretty high, and I thought what's different about the people that are successful and the people that don't succeed with this surgery, and I think that it came down to the lifestyle and how you actually like use the tool to develop a new way of new habits, new way of eating, new way of exercising.
And that is harder than I think people give it credit.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah, and I set out on a course of like educating myself in both nutrition and exercise, and I got like a personal trainer's whatever certificate just to so I can
Did you really?
yeah
Oh, okay.
just to see if I what I could learn about exercise and movement, and then I took a bunch of courses on nutrition and I taught myself that, and the whole time, big shout out to Ethan Suplee's podcast.
Mhm.
I started listening religiously to that podcast.
What a relatable story that guy
Oh,
has.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks incredible, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really had a crazy transformation, both in mind and body. I think that he's developed such a crazy, perspective on this whole thing,
Mhm.
eating and exercising. I started listening to guys like Dr. Mike Israetel,
I like Dr. RP
he's great
strength.
RP
Yeah.
strength. Yeah. And the science behind all this stuff.
He just had
And
a surgery to remove some excess skin too.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a painful surgery. But
Yeah, he looked miserable.
yeah.
Yeah.
So over the course of a year, I lost 175 pounds, and
Wow.
and I my goal was to build as much muscle or retain as much of that muscle as I could, and
You
then
look
build
incredible. I
upon
mean,
it.
obviously retaining muscle when you're losing body fat at that cadence is not easy.
Yeah, it's very hard. I've gained some since I've gotten down to my lowest weight, but
Normal.
yeah, very normal.
Yeah.
I'm still a work in progress, but the fact is that I've learned a lot through that process, so it's been really really cool. And during that process, I also completely quit drinking.
I did too. I quit like 2 years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's amazing. How do you feel?
Um, I'm still adjusting on some level to the social stuff.
Yeah, the
I don't have a
lubricant.
desire to drink,
Sure. Yeah.
but we as a society have built so much of our social engagement with one another
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah.
So my wife and I have a tendency whenever we get some time alone, we have a date day or something
Yeah.
like that. We don't go to like a restaurant and drink. We go to the gym, work out, and then go to like a restaurant afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's weird. So my brother and my siblings that are younger are all very much into like drinking is the
Mhm.
center of their discussions.
Yeah.
but I don't crave it. I don't miss it at all.
Yeah.
You know, every once in a while I'll have like a non-alcoholic beer if I'm missing like the
Yeah.
beer feeling, but
Totally.
that's rare.
Yeah.
Maybe 3-4 times a year.
I feel the same way. I think that the social lubricant part of it was huge for me, and that was one of the hardest parts about stopping was just like, what do I hold in my hand when I go to like a
Yeah.
a social
Diet Coke,
situation?
brother.
Yeah,
DC, baby.
it's just weird, and like it's and I heard you guys talking about this on another show, but like you go into like these like finance meetings and like everyone's drinking and you're like the only one who's not.
It's a huge part of my problem. So like I'll
Yeah.
go to I'll go to New York or I'll have investment bankers come out
Mhm.
and they're in a high stress environment and kind of like you were where they're neglecting their bodies to focus on the business.
Right.
You can see people do it now because you
Mhm.
can recognize when people are doing that. And I feel bad because I know how traveling, and you know this better than anybody, traveling is taxing on your body.
Totally.
You know, getting on a plane, getting off a plane, it has ramifications. And you start drinking, you're now super
Yeah.
dehydrated. You know you're taking a toll, and you might not show it in like weight gain. You might
Mhm.
not show it, but it's having ramifications. And I go to these meetings, and I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm not drinking. And the automatic question I always get is, oh, DUI, you know,
Yeah.
drinking problem, and you're
What
like,
happened?
no, man, I just feel better not drinking. It literally started with my wife and I just having like a competition, and then I'm like, you know, honestly, I don't miss it.
Yeah.
And it's been several years now.
Isn't it funny how when you tell someone that you don't drink, like they start to immediately defend themselves and they're drinking too?
Mhm.
It's weird.
It's
It's a
a
social
weird
thing.
social stigma because and the thing is, so we pulled it up on the show, I think a couple shows ago, we pulled up like the spectrum of the drugs that you can take and how bad they are
Yeah.
for your body.
Yeah.
And alcohol is by far and away the
Way
most.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is going to get really, I'm diving into the weeds here, but we as a society, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I know it's going to sound like I'm like trying to be Joe Rogan, but we have lived with the propaganda of what society and the government and people around us have told us is okay and not okay for so long that we have rationalized things that we know aren't true.
Right.
And you're like, wait a minute. Okay, so the government is saying that drinking alcohol is okay, but smoking marijuana, well, up until recently anyway,
Right.
was incredibly bad for you and it was a dangerous drug. And you start
Yeah.
looking at the ramifications. Just look at the data. I mean, this is
Mhm.
not an opinion thing. I'm not a weed guy. I don't really care.
Right.
You know, but you look at the data and you're like, this one is clearly worse for you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But we've rationalized acceptance. It doesn't. There's so much that we as a society choose not to confront that's in front of us because we
Mhm.
just want to live with the paradigm.
Totally.
You know, and you're like, how does that make sense? And there's so many like old wives' tales, like sayings that are just like apple cider vinegar is good for you. Is it? I don't know. I haven't seen any conclusive data to that degree.
Nope.
But everyone's like, oh, it'll help levelize your blood sugar. I'm like, will it though? You know?
Yeah.
And everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, brush your teeth. Yeah, I agree. I want my teeth to smell. I want to smell good. I want my teeth to look better. But we've seen a lot of studies recently that say that a lot of tooth decay is genetic.
Right. Much more genetic than it is about your maintenance.
That's right. So
Yeah.
that's why some kids who may not eat anything bad at all and not even a ton of sugar are still getting
Tons of cavities.
tons of cavities. And you're
Yeah.
like, well, is fluoride good? Is fluoride bad? And there's a whole
Right.
like sub argument there. And I'm just like, bro, like when are we going to start looking at the data and start ignoring like these government sponsored campaigns? I mean, this was with
Mhm.
diet and nutrition too for a long time.
Totally. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's really hard for the average person to know who to believe and what to believe, especially with the spectrum of content creators that fall on every peg along that line.
Yep.
You know, they're all over the place. And it's hard.
And there's money to be made for each of those narratives.
Totally.
And it's people overlook the money to be made in the narrative and go, that's what I should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's about every facet of of self-improvement has that problem. And there's always somebody there who's there to make some money off of you. You know, a very wise man once told me, don't ever buy courses.
Yeah. I have lived by that credo for a long period of time. And I think people would get really bothered by it because there are so many people that are perceived to be legitimate that sell courses.
Yeah, but how do you know?
You don't know. So Saied and I have tossed this around, like building a course that works for continuing education credits for realtors, for attorneys, and selling it for like dirt cheap, like $20
Yeah.
as a way to say, look, like we're going to give you real value.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hyper expensive.
Mhm.
You can get continuing education credit. You have to take courses in this to keep your whatever license you have anyway. And I just can't stomach it.
Yeah.
I just can't.
There's something about it, right? It's
Yeah.
just,
I can't do it.
yeah. There's
So.
a lot of voices out there to listen to. And I think that, it's really important for people to just try some things for themselves. Don't just dump everything into some ideology. I did that for a long time. There was a time, a couple years ago where like I was hardcore Hormozy.
Oh, really,
Yeah.
Alex? Yeah.
I was starting a new business. I was taking a step back from the marketing stuff, and I wanted to start a business, and I saw Starlink was coming up, and I wanted to create these mounts for off-road vehicles to be able to put a Starlink dish on your roof of your car. And like, dude, when I was like starting that out, it was like I was listening to him like he was like a preacher, like, and I started to see some patterns in the way that he does things, and I was like just taking notes, like, dude, he's like all work, like he wakes up from like this time, 5 a.m, he's just working until like 7 or 8 in the morning.
He appeals specifically to a subculture and demographic that really resonates with.
Totally.
So he leans into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I there's so many things now after a year and a half of doing this business that I'm just like, I'm not like Alex at that at all. So like I pick and
I think
choose.
he would tell you he's not healthy either, though.
He just did, actually. If you listen to the most recent Modern Wisdom podcast.
I love Chris Williams.
I do too.
The lighting that show was people call him kind of douchey, and I don't know where that comes from. I guess it's
Love
easy.
Island, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, fair point.
Yeah.
But the lighting on his show is such a beautiful cinematic tone. It was set a lot of the inspiration for what we did here.
Yeah.
But I saw that podcast. It was 4 hours long.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't listen to this whole thing.
No, I started in the first half hour. He's talking about how like he's departing from some of those tenets that he put out there for the last couple of years, where it's like, who cares, just work harder. Like
I kind of expected that from him, because it makes sense for a single man who's got a wife who's equally as motivated to feel that way.
Right.
And I don't know what their thoughts are around children. I don't think I've seen his comments on it. But at some point, as he personally evolves and matures, that maturation will lead him to a more balanced life.
Totally agree. And I think that's probably what's happening, or it could just be burning out a little bit. I mean, I don't know.
I think fatigue is real.
Yeah. So in the last couple of years, I've been building up this business. I've been, trying to walk back some of the marketing stuff. I feel like the kind of lifestyle that I want to live, which isn't extravagant, it's just owning a home in Orange County.
Which, unfortunately, and this has been fodder for a lot of social media commentary and some of my most recent posts around this topic, owning a home in Orange County is an extravagant thing now.
Nowadays,
because of the cost of it and how much you have to make to afford one. It's kind of wild. But let's spend some time unpacking why you wanted to start this business and the process. There's a lot of people who listen to the show who aspire to do this too. Mm-hmm. I think the lessons you've learned along the way might be helpful.
Totally. Let's do it. I think that when I started this business, I believed that the only way for me to get to where I want to be financially was to have ownership in something versus working for another company or having a salary or a job like that.
Okay. I think that's probably a fair assessment. There are W-2 jobs which do pay a lot.
Of course.
But those are far and few between.
Yeah.
In a dense metropolitan area like Orange County, they're hyper competitive. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole entire cohort of people who are not retiring who would otherwise give up those jobs to a younger demographic, which are now sticking around for longer, which means even less of those jobs are available.
Right.
So I think being an entrepreneur tends to be the only viable path near term for a lot of people.
It is. And it is no means a for sure thing. It is a huge Hail Mary, because to start a business that gets you to some, degree of success by, standards here in Orange County, that's a feat in its own, to be able to start something that gets you to that point within a short enough amount of time. But I saw it as a shot for a guy who never got a college degree, who never was formally trained in anything, who's someone who just had a lot of life experience, a lot of career experience.
Look at your career experience. The arc of it has been so diversified over so many different subtopics that it's hard to ignore that you had exposure. People often ask me why I think that I'm good in the banking space, and I don't know that I feel that way or not, but the answer is when you work at a startup and you build, you get exposure to all the different channels within a business that you otherwise wouldn't have, which gives you a much broader perspective of the business. Your background kind of lends itself to that, particularly for starting in automotive accessory like or adjacent
Right.
business.
Yeah, and marketing that business. And I think starting it was really the culmination of a lot of the experience that I had in the industry and outside of the industry too. And I didn't know what I didn't know how the business was gonna do. I didn't have a clear path to where I wanted to go. I just knew that I had something in my hands that I had built for myself, and other people started asking me, "Can I get one of those?"
So why'd you build it for yourself?
So, as a content creator and often finding myself in places like the middle of Baja where there isn't a bar of cell phone reception for 2 days, um, Starlink was a huge, huge leg up in technology. I mean, not only just from like a, "Hey, I can post on social media" kinda thing from the middle of nowhere, but it was a safety thing. You know, you break something out there, if you don't have any means of communication to somebody, you can't get the parts you need to fix it. It was also an emergency contact for in case someone were to get hurt. You know, I've
Right.
had to use it before to do that to get help. Um, Checking back in with family back home, wherever you're at. Navigation, being able to stream music. You know, there was a lot of benefits that came with high speed internet, literally wherever you wanted to go on the planet. And the problem was that Starlink didn't make it easy to put it on your vehicle. They just had a little kickstand thing that they said, okay, you can just set it outside and plug it into a 110 volt, just
It's
wall
not
outlet.
permanent. It's kind of messy, and frankly, people having to break down stuff means one extra step, and it's a inconvenience.
Yeah, and it wasn't available in motion technically back then.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
it was like you had to have it parked, but it worked in motion. And so we were like, okay, well, let's start to build a mount for this Gen 3 dish, which we started to iterate on. I had a business partner, actually two business partners, husband and wife, and they own a 3D scanning business. And so
Hmm.
they do a lot of engineering and parts development. And they were the perfect people to work with because they were able to iterate on the manufacturing side and the design side much faster than if I were to take that on myself because I'm not technically, savvy in that way.
Hmm.
Um, and in the middle of iterating that Gen 3 dish, the Mini came out, and we were just like, "Oh, dude, this is the product right
Yeah.
here." Because
Smaller, more portable.
12-volt ready,
Yeah.
it already had the router built into it, and it was just really light and simple. And we built them out for that, and that just took off.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it was really great.
So you decide on an idea.
Mhm,
You guys build a concept. You start using it.
mhm.
At what point do you feel like this has got traction?
I think it was about 2 or 3 months after I had started the company, not before, this is before pre-sales.
Hmm.
So we weren't actually selling yet, but I just had so much interest from the the landing page that I
Hmm.
created. We had, I think, 300 email signups for our newsletter when we started the
Wow.
website before we even sold a single product.
Which for a new product from a smaller company, that's a huge amount of interest.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
somebody who, and all it was just referrals from friends and family and posting it on my social medias and stuff like that.
But people who
So
sign up for a newsletter like that are generally interested in the product. And I mean, even if you get like a 50% conversion rate on people who are interested in
oh
buying
yeah.
it, that's guaranteed sales on day one.
Yeah, and that's what we had when we launched. We had guaranteed sales. They came in and the company just started to grow and grow and we actually didn't really have a lot of spikes during the holidays. It was just kind of like this like up and to the right,
Mm.
sales trajectory. So it's been really cool to be able to do everything from like the business side, the administrative side, the manufacturing to the marketing to customer service, like basically all of that under just like 3 people.
And you guys are doing that nights and weekends or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm.
I was leaving at the same time. I got my mortgage license,
Mhm.
and I can go into why I got that. But I mean,
I want
I
to.
just yeah, I think that um, I had a couple of friends that were in mortgage, and they reached out to me. They knew I was getting burnt out doing this marketing stuff, and after COVID, some of the money was going away for that. So they were like, "Hey, you could get your if you got your mortgage license, you can come work for us." And I said, okay, it's been a long time, since I've even been in that industry, but I do know a little bit about it. So
Full circle, baby.
I literally just said, okay, I'll take the course, and if I pass the test the first time, I'll investigate it further. I
Huh.
just kind of did it to challenge myself,
Okay.
and I passed the test with flying colors the first time after like 10 days.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
You've been in this industry,
it
you
was
know?
it was funny. I didn't really recall anything from the course that I took for the NMLS. I really recalled a lot of my prior knowledge from 2008 9.
And for full disclosure, and because I have to take a shot across the bow, I've been begging Saeed to do this for years.
Really get
Yeah.
his NMLS license.
Just
Yeah.
to get his real estate license.
Oh, real estate. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
Has not done it.
Yeah.
So I'm calling him out now.
Yeah, it's smart, man.
Again.
Yeah. There you go. He's not even here to defend himself.
He's not,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't have much to
Yeah.
say. I have an active broker's license, so he could easily just pop it under me and do whatever he wants to.
Oh, yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go, Saied.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
I know, good thing.
Yeah. So I got back into it, and I realized I really enjoyed it. And so I made that basically my full-time job. I was doing that basically 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, doing loan origination, not doing well at all the first 6 months because of just the market that the things that you guys have been talking about. It's been really hard.
Plus, you got to find your rhythm and cadence.
Oh, yeah.
Which is its own separate self-identity vehicle that you got to kind of navigate through.
Totally. And that was the biggest challenge, was like, how did this off-road media guy, automotive content creator, like do this hard right turn into being this mortgage guy? But he also has this other business that he just started. There were so many things in the air, the last 6 months or so, just spinning a lot of plates and being confused about like what direction to go and what's going to get me to my goals and all that stuff. And so on nights and weekends, I was at the shop packaging products, shipping stuff out, answering emails whenever I could at the office throughout the day, taking phone calls for customer service throughout the day when I'm at work, and spending basically every waking moment working for the last probably 9 months.
It's not very glamorous.
It's not. And I think that what's kept me going through it is that I know that this is, again, another season of building. It's a season of work. It's not something that's going to be infinite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often get asked, so when I was building this place, I had friends who were like, what are you doing? Just pay for a contractor. And I'm a licensed contractor. And I'm like, no, like I should be able to do this. Like I'm going to do it. And we would have these conversations. We would go back and forth. And they'd be like, dude, just spend the time with your family. And I'm like, no, like I am going to build this. And people were like, why are you spending so much time and money and investing in it? And you're working nights and weekends. And for literally like 5 or 6 months, like I was working 16 hours a day on the weekends. And then I was working nights several times a week.
I remember the Instagram stories. I'm like, dude, he's going hard.
I really should have made that like a vlog series. I missed the opportunity.
That's okay.
I should have done it. But
that's another thing to add to your plate that day then.
Well, I'm actually considering at some point in time starting a new business. And we can talk off the hot mics. But if I do it, I want to keep the central topic around what I'm starting quiet. And I want to start a vlog series without telling people what it is and let it build up to a very public kind of opening
launch. Yeah. That's a cool concept.
So it's going to be extremely well funded. Like I have a concept. You're talking really, really big. And it might start out of this space.
Wow.
So this might be kind of like your Gen 2 evolution of what this space was supposed to become. So I'm thinking about, and historically speaking, my career has never been able to leverage the social presence in such a meaningful way. But I was thinking about it the other night with my wife, and I was like, you know what? It would be really cool to do kind of like a Ryan Serhant behind the scenes look at what business is like building something that I know is going to open at scale. And I think that's probably going to be what I'm going to do at some point in time. And
I love that.
I haven't figured out when or how, but that's going to be. Well, I figured out the how. I just haven't figured out when.
Keep me posted on that one.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. And then we're gonna figure it out. But I get what it's like to have all the plates spinning, and it is exhausting. But there's so much you learn about yourself, and you add another business kind of element to your background that makes you more complex.
Yeah. And I struggled because a lot of times, especially with social media, I see people who are just specialists in what they do.
They niche down too far in my mind.
They are the guy for that thing.
Yeah.
And or they're one of the 10 people that that do that one thing.
Yeah.
And I worried a long time about like, do I need to be that much of a specialist? Or is a generalist that has a little bit of knowledge in a lot of different things a better way to go forward? And I thought about this on a very deep level. Like I'm talking like you, like staying up at night, staring at the ceiling and just thinking about the future of my career and where I'm going to be. And it had nothing to do with the optics of it. I mean, a little bit with like, what content am I going to make about whatever I'm doing? But beyond that, it was like, what's going to get me to my goal? My goal isn't a monetary thing. It's literally just a happiness thing.
Yeah. And I think that people often conflate the ideologies of money and happiness because they are interrelated on some level, but there's a point of diminishing returns when money comes in.
It's smaller than most people think.
It is much smaller than most people think. I think on the average, and keep in mind the average salary across the country is closer to about 70,000 ish. I think. Maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know. I haven't checked. I didn't check the.
I
It
think
used
it's
to be
like 80
58,000.
almost, I think now.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think once you get past like around that inflection point of what the average salary is, anything above that doesn't bring you the same degree of happiness that getting up to that point did.
Exactly.
And I'm watering down the numbers so I don't have
Yeah.
somebody who trolls me later on saying you got it wrong, bro. But
Yeah.
I have I've spent a lot of time thinking about this as of late, the money aspect and the happiness and the career and the building, and I've come to the resolution, at least for me anyway, that it doesn't stop.
No.
There's always going to be this infinite curiosity
Hmm.
of self growth.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that. You know that, right?
I don't know what it's like to not have that.
Did you find that when you pivoted to the mortgage space, you started making content that was finance related,
It's trying to. I'm trying to do more of it,
right?
but I've been holding myself back
Why?
because I'm honestly afraid of what might happen.
What does that mean?
So this is getting real deep.
Okay, yeah, all right.
I've been worried about this one really silly thing, which is just losing people who have been around for the journey.
That's why I was asking. Is
Yeah.
you've built and curated a following in this niche
Hmm.
that have been around for the journey, but you can still do both, right?
Totally could. And I planned it, like next weekend, my wife and I are going to go down to Mexico for 4 days and do a Bronco Raptor trip.
Congrats on the wedding, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's, I haven't even gone into that part of my life, but, meeting my wife has been, so transformative for me. And not just because like I found this woman that I love and I love to spend time with and who supports all these crazy things that I've been doing, but just the way I've been able to grow as a person has just been kicked into such a crazy high gear when I felt like I wanted to start building a life with her. That just changed everything.
It's a weird. I don't want to call it instinctual, but there's something innately human about it.
It is. Yeah. It's weird that I already think about like what I want my future unborn children to have. And I'm doing things today to
Bro,
ensure
wait till you
that they
have. We have a
that life.
6-year-old, and we waited till we were older because my wife didn't
Yeah.
want kids. There is something so incredible. My mom used to smell me when I was a kid,
Mm.
and she'd go, "Oh, like," and I was like, well, "That's weird," right? Because but
Yeah.
I do it to my son, and I get it.
It's this caveman thing, right?
It's this pheromone based, caveman, instinctual human thing.
Mhm.
But it also has like a biological cortisol. And I don't know if anybody's ever tested this. I feel like my cortisol, like my stress lowers
This drops down.
when my son's in the room and I'm hugging him. When my son was born, I made it a point. Every day I was leaving the office at 3:30, 4 o'clock at the latest. I'd get home. We would have dinner together. I'd give him a bath. I would put him to bed. I would lay in bed with him. And the reason, in part, why was when he was born, and a lot of fathers feel this way. I actually talked to a dad about this last night, that when my son was born, I didn't feel like this immediate connection to him. And it makes sense because the mom carries this child in them inside for 9 months, and then they're born, and there's this instant connection because they've been connected in a way that we as fathers don't really have the same experience. You see it, you're there third party.
At least not right at the beginning.
Not in the beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of dads feel that way. They just don't openly talk about it because it's stigmatized to not feel a
embarrassing,
connection with your own kid.
Right.
But the more and more I spent time with my son in those moments, the more that connection grew in such a meaningful and cool way. But it's not talked about a lot. And I really wanted to be connected to my son. And honestly, it's the best part of my life right now. But
Yeah.
it's weird how we as a species, as a human, as animals, you partner up with whoever it is you partner up with, and it can really elevate a lot of you as a human in ways that you probably didn't expect.
Yeah. She exposed things that I've been neglecting in my life. She's, bolstered things that I needed bolstering in. She's been the rock in terms of like my growth. Cause I don't think that I would have even tried to achieve half the stuff I have in the last couple of years if it weren't for her. So
what does she do for a living?
she is she's an esthetician. So she
Okay. Yeah,
actually
that's right.
she's great at what she does. Yeah.
My wife is a registered nurse. Very different background.
Yeah.
But I love that having the different perspective around.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife's human EQ and like knowledge. I am not a social butterfly. Like this is a practice apathy for me. I am not good at this. If it were up to me, I'd shut up, sit in a corner, and just work.
Right.
Probably similar. to
Same
you.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife will go into a room and know and talk to everybody, and it's
Oh, wow.
enraging.
Yeah.
Like she will just literally like she'll know everybody's backstory. She knows every mom in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
She's like fully ingratiated in the details. People like confide in her in ways they would never confide in me. And you're just like,
How do you do that?
what the hell,
Yeah.
man?
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful symmetry. It's the yin and yang thing.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And my wife, she really didn't know where she was going in her career a couple years ago when I first met her too. And
Wow.
she actually took a career course that helped her kind of develop some of those, those things that she would like to maybe try and learn, and fell in love with skincare. And she just like boom, 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 went to school, got the license, got the job, got, all this stuff. And she just absolutely loves what she does. And she's actually, I think, #1 in her entire company right now.
Is she really?
Yeah.
I
In
believe
terms of sales and customer service and satisfaction, all that stuff.
it's a cool gig, man. You could have a separate cottage business dedicated solely to that over time
Sure.
too. And I have some
Yeah.
friends who did that and then developed their own skincare products. And
Yeah.
it can really go in a lot of directions. So
That's really cool.
I also want to spend a little bit of time like full circle. So now you're in the mortgage space.
Yeah.
You have this hesitation about, I guess mixing the content.
Yeah.
But then how do you market and brand yourself in that space? Plus, there's a good argument to be made that, and I don't want to bastardize people, but here, a lot of people in the automotive space could use the financial literacy
Right.
that you could probably give them because
Yeah.
you're in this business side.
Which has been the cross section that I've been trying to plan out the content around. How do you make financial literacy uh, digestible by guys like me, by guys who are mostly just gearheads that have dirty, dirt under their fingernails, and maybe they work a blue collar job, or they don't know a whole lot about real estate, or maybe they've never bought a home before. They don't know anything about buying a house because of the market that we're in, and they've been renting their whole lives.
That was the premise of the show originally.
Yeah.
That's why I started it.
Yeah.
Is I feel like the expletive-filled rages were much more relatable than Dave Ramsey telling everybody that they're wrong.
I hate Dave Ramsey
He's
so
the devil.
much.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why he's the devil. And his finance people know that I hate him.
Yeah.
And it's a whole thing now.
Oh, good.
I'm gonna get a C&D at some point in time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. It's gonna
Yeah.
come.
Post it on Instagram.
Dude, I used to have his book up in the background, and then it caused all sorts of problems later on. I wound up getting threatened by somebody on his finance team, and I should probably pull it back, and I did. But a lot of people who listen to the show are actually car guys.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this to you in a way where I'm encouraging you to find your happy sweet spot where you feel comfortable doing it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us who grew up loving cars also need the money to fund that addiction.
Totally.
And a lot of us have aspirations to do more. And the concept behind the show originally was like we can speak to people in a way that sounds more like two guys having a conversation that are our friends than it does some guy like lecturing you on how you should and shouldn't be spending your money.
Yeah.
And I think that you have that. I mean, dude, you've been fantastic on this show.
I appreciate that.
This is a very natural thing for you.
This is the first interview style podcast I've ever done.
Is it really?
Yeah.
You have a podcast set up, though.
We haven't done anything yet.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We just started mapping out some content and getting some realtors in there and stuff like that. So
you don't need to map it out, man.
Yeah, I know.
That's the misconception. Like this is so much more organic.
Yeah.
So what's this podcast going to be about?
So we originally created the studio just as a content space. We're still, dabbling with the idea.
And
of
who's
being
we? Like what was the
me and Elliot, who actually is the branch manager.
Okay.
I work with. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And he's not a content guy, but he's more comfortable in front of a camera these days. He's done a couple of videos with me, and we wanted to have the space to be able to do whatever it is that we wanted to do in terms of content, whether that was a podcast or just doing, some educational videos or just talking to a realtor about what they do and introducing them. Our intention is also to use it to help realtors kind of market themselves a little bit and forge relationships with them as well, and on a networking basis.
Realtors need authenticity in the business. There's too many people. Making Matters Current is a great social media page. I find them incredibly disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
They manipulate data to support a realtor narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And then these realtors go out and talk to their clients, some of which are financially literate enough to go, okay, that's not accurate. You're now bending facts to make me to buy a home and get a sale as opposed to being authentic.
Yeah.
We've actually I used to trash a lot of the real estate industry, even though I'm part of it and I've been in part of it my whole life. My family's all part of it because I was so frustrated with this. And I've learned to embrace that there is an entire subset of really, really aspirational realtors who listen to stuff, who really, really want to do the right thing.
Right.
and really educate people. And I think there's a value for someone like you in that space.
I hope so. And I actually am one of the weirdos who took that fiduciary responsibility seriously
Yeah, you should.
when I took that NMLS test and
Mhm.
I passed. And I cringe at a lot of realtors and mortgage brokers that are making content these days. And that's part of the reason why I thought I could bring value to this industry is because I come from a very authentic place of creating content. It's really off the cuff. And I was my content was also full of expletives on my Instagram page. I would openly bash UTV guys.
Mhm.
Like I was totally too edgy for a lot of brands. They
I
didn't want
still
to
do,
work
by
with
the
me.
way. Just
Yeah,
some shows I don't, some shows I do. Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And I feel like that level of authenticity really connects with the right people, especially
Mhm.
those who don't want to listen to some dude wearing a suit or, wearing, a tie talking about something that they don't actually even really understand.
I used to love my suits and ties.
Yeah.
I had custom
Yeah.
suits. I mean, I went above and beyond to dress very Italian, very well, and I invested thousands and thousands of dollars. And to be honest with myself, and my wife's probably going to laugh at this, I don't like putting them on anymore.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it. And it's just not who I am anymore.
Yeah. And that's okay. And I think that there's a whole subset of people out there who appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a weird thing with society too, where you have to look the part for some people for them to
Totally.
take you seriously.
Yeah.
And for me, my background, my pedigree, I don't think I'm the world's greatest at anything, but
Mhm.
I've done a couple things, and I find so many people will look at me and be like, "Nah, you don't know what
Mm.
you're talking about," and you're like, "Why? You're wearing a hoodie." I've literally had that comment on social media. You're wearing a hoodie. I'm like, how does that how do you discredit me
Yeah,
automatically from wearing a hoodie? But the perception is interesting.
it is.
So I want to be mindful of the time. We are
Yeah, I
getting
know
a
we're
little
getting up
long in
there.
the tooth.
Yeah.
It's just you're easy to talk to. But what's the next chapter for you going to be? Because I'm going to check in and hold you
Yeah.
accountable.
Yeah, I've since taken a little bit of a step back away from the from Revelink, from my Starlink mount business, to focus more on mortgage and finance. And I'm
Would you
really
start another business again?
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that being a mortgage broker is in a way a little entrepreneurial
Mhm.
because yes, you're working for a
It's a
company.
lot
Yeah,
entrepreneurial.
you're working for a company, but at the end of the day, you're in charge of getting your leads, you're in charge of working the business and all that. But uh, in no way am I averse to starting another business. I just don't know what yet. And
You ever thought about starting your own mortgage company?
not yet. I don't think I know enough about it yet.
I can help you do that.
I hope Elliot's not listening to this. He's like, he just came on.
No, no, no.
What do you mean?
I think everybody in the space ultimately aspires to have their own autonomy,
Sure.
and I think that's a perfectly reasonable long-term goal. So,
Sure.
Elliot, don't get mad at me. It's all
No.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, I think growing the content side of what I do is really in my sights right now. Is making what we do very relatable, to the average guy. And
You're
the
going to be
guys
really
that I
good
work
at it. I'm
with.
telling you right
I
now.
hope so.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're going to be really good at it.
And I want to just show people that there's a way to do this without sounding super cringe or just like spouting off stuff that isn't factual.
Mhm.
And you hear we've talked about this before. People like to say it's a great time to buy a house, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Bye now. Dave
man,
Ramsey.
dude, I don't know.
it's-
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, there is, but
Yeah.
here's what I'll say too: is I used to come out like guns blazing on some of this stuff, and there's guys we mentioned Logan over at Housing Wire.
Mhm.
He's a hardcore housing pundit. Now, keep in
Mhm.
mind he works for Housing Wire, so he's got a vested interest in the outcome of that narrative.
Right.
But I think he legitimately believes what he's talking about when he talks about housing, and he would argue pretty compellingly to his defense, using real good data,
Mhm.
that it's always a good time to buy a house.
Yeah.
And he would firmly stand behind that. I get it. I don't think that at this point in time I can safely say that anyone really knows what's going to happen next.
Mm-mm.
But I think that's what gets lost in translation for most people is
Yeah.
that from a business perspective, volatility is not your friend.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can make money, but you can also lose a lot of money, and
The
that's
risk goes
essentially
up.
gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the VIX at right now?
It's actually more stabilized. It's
Is
lower.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not as bad as it had been
I
historically.
learned about that from you, by the way.
VIX,
Yeah.
the hostility,
Yeah.
volatility index.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think there's a lot more that I've learned from you.
really. It's weird.
You and Said, I will say it's both of you guys. But
So we'll close the show on this. Saied and I still struggle with imposter syndrome from
Oh,
time to time.
man.
And it's I worked under a guy who I didn't even realize was mentoring me for the course of, call it 20 years, who in some moments was very mean to me. But he was a former bond trader, and he had this incredible view of the capital markets, the secondary markets, Wall Street, and how they all interplayed with the treasuries and bonds. And I would come in the mornings and hear him like yell and like be upset, and his just commentary anecdotally. And over the course of like 20 years, I picked up way more than I realized. Like just stuff like where I'm like, oh, I don't even know where that came from. You're just
Blacked out.
Yeah, I blacked out. And as we've done this show, more and more time has gone by where I'm like, I think I learned a couple of things.
You kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. I mean that
No.
as in like I'm kind of stunned that I know what some of these topics are. And for me, it's like I don't realize how much other people don't know because I didn't actively go out and learn it. I just learned it as a byproduct of being in the business.
Yeah.
And hearing really smart people, smarter than me, around me talking about it.
Yeah.
And the one thing I can tell you is that I'm still constantly learning about all of these things.
Right.
Even for shows like when we talk about the VIX, like Saied will go and do some research and I'll learn some new things about the history. But I nerd out on it just as much as I do like talking about it.
Yeah.
I still read about these things.
Right.
So, I'm learning from you. You're learning from me. We're all learning from each other. That's what
Absolutely.
makes it a
I
good
think
show.
my favorite frame for all this, to tie it up with a bow, is like I tend to think back, like, is the 18-year-old version of me proud of who I am today? And what am I doing today to make the 58-year-old version of me proud of who I am?
Is the 18-year-old proud of you today?
He is.
All right.
Very proud.
All right, man. Good man.
Yeah.
You should be.